So this guy says that this is a story that his uncle has told them. It has never changed, and this is something that he swears to have seen. If you want to listen to the story in Spanish, it is coming from Relatos de la Noche. The story is titled Las Criaturas del Pueblo, and if you don't know Spanish, let me translate the story for you. So his uncle lived in Mexico City, but then decided to move back to the pueblo where they're from, and that is because the family owns a lot of land there. He says that the land that they live in is so big. His family lives there, his aunts live there, and they had another uncle's home there, but that uncle had moved away, so basically that house was empty. So his uncle Juan ended up moving into the other uncle's home that was empty with his wife and his son, and everything was fine. So he ends up finding a job in that town at a funeral home, but then he went for another job that was going to pay him so much more money. The only issue was that it was a good distance away from them. The job was exactly 3 hours away from where he now lived, and it was going to pay really good, so that's why he accepted the job, but it was going to be like in the middle of nowhere. He remembers when he drove to that place, he literally had to drive in between mountains to get to where his job was. That place was so remote that a lot of the roads that he had to take were all made of dirt, which is why he was given the job, because they were going to do pavement on that road, and his job was to take care of those really expensive machines all night. There was going to be a big machine in the entrance of that place and another one farthest to the back of that place, and his job was basically to be kind of like security all night. He would go and make sure no one's gonna steal the machine at the front. An hour later, he would have to go to the back of the town to make sure no one's getting it. So he was just gonna have to go back and forth every hour throughout the night. Those machines were really expensive, which is why they needed him to stay there, and at the very least, they needed people to see that somebody was there taking care of the machine so nobody would try to steal them. The first night that the uncle was there, he goes to the machine that is in the entrance of the town, and he says that that machine was under some street light. He ends up sitting inside of the machine and just observing for like an hour, making sure nobody was coming, and then he was gonna have to go to the one in the back of that town. So an hour later, it was around 1 in the morning, and he starts heading to the other side to go look at the other machine. He only has a flashlight, and he's walking in between hills, and as you can imagine, it was really dark in that area. All he had with him was that flashlight, and he wasn't scared. I mean, he's lived in remote towns all his life, so he didn't think anything of it. Again, he wasn't scared, and walking to the other machine was only a 20-minute distance. So he gets to the machine, he goes inside, and he's just there waiting, and he waited for another hour, and that's when he had to get out and go to the entrance one all over again. So again, he has his flashlight, he's starting to walk back to the entrance of the town, and that is when he sees something really weird. Remember that in the entrance where the machine was, there were actual street lamps there, and he claims that he sees this little figure, like this little person. He remembers the eyes being like lit up and they were red. He even remembers seeing patches of white hair at the top of this thing that led all the way down its back. He said that this little thing walked without moving his arms or fingers. Oof, I got chills. The uncle said that the second this thing saw him, he started walking like faster towards the uncle, and then right when he was about to get in front of him, he just moved to like the foresty bushy parts, and he lost sight of this thing. His uncle was in shock. He couldn't move, and he just couldn't believe what he had just seen. By the way, his uncle had been in the Mexican army. Like, he had fought really bad people. He had caught really bad people, and he's like, why am I scared right now? Like, I have dealt with like the worst of the worst, but this thing has scared me, and now he's thinking, fuck, like I have to come and work here every night. He also decided not to drive 3 hours back home and then come back. He decided to get a little room in that town to sleep in, and it's like, I don't even want to be here anymore. He still decided to stay. This job was only gonna be for like a month, so he had been living in that town week after week after week, and he had never came out to explore, being that he had to work all night, so all day he would go to sleep. But in the last week that he was gonna stay there, he decided that he was gonna go and explore the town. Honestly, he was doing that just hoping to see that there was people there if anything happened, and he was trying not to be scared of what he had seen out there. He ends up going to this little grocery store in that town and he was getting something to eat. And when he was paying the owner of the grocery store, this lady asked him where he was from. It was very obvious that he wasn't from that town. I'm sure everybody there knew each other and he was someone that they had never seen before. So he ends up telling her where he's from, what he's doing there, how he's having to take care of the machines overnight. Immediately after hearing that he is working an overnight shift, this lady asks him if he had ever seen anything weird out there. The uncle said no, and truly it was only because he didn't want to repeat the experience that he had. Above everything, he also didn't want to share the story because he didn't want them to think he was crazy or like a weirdo or like making up stories. The lady ends up telling him, well, you're lucky that you didn't see anything, and that is when she starts explaining something that she experienced in that town. Something that had happened to her recently, like while this guy was living there at the same time. This lady says that there was a night where she was in her bedroom and she was folding clothes, arranging it in her closet, and that is when she heard a lot of kids laughing outside. It wasn't weird that kids were out there like having fun and playing, but it was really late at night, and as the night went on and it got darker, she was still hearing these kids laughing and playing outside. So she got so curious hearing these kids laughing that she decided that she was gonna go and look outside her window to see whose kids were out here still laughing and playing outside, and that is when she saw something that she will never forget. Outside of her house there is a street lamp, and underneath that street lamp is when she saw something really strange. There was a really tall being, all white, almost pale, with horns coming out of his head, and she said that they were curved in like inward facing each other like this. Like this. Why am I explaining it? I'm showing you. The thing is that this being with the horns all white and pale was playing with this little being. He was holding this little thing with both of its hands. She said that the tall horned being was going in circles with the other little tiny being in its hands, almost like they were playing. And the worst part about this is that this lady described in detail that little being, and it was the exact same thing that the uncle had seen that night underneath that light post. All of the laughters, those kid laughters that she was hearing, had been coming from those two beings. The lady says that the second she saw that, the second she heard the laughters coming for them, she fainted. She completely fainted inside of her bedroom by the window, and she didn't come to until her husband had come home and saw her laying there and basically like woke her up. The uncle heard everything that she said. He couldn't respond. He said nothing to this lady. Luckily, the uncle was gonna leave by the end of that week. He never saw this creature or being again, and he left without looking back. He never returned to this town again. I would have left the day that I saw that being. I would have wished that somebody was stealing that machine so that I can go with them. Like, I'll steal it with you and take me out of this town, because what the hell? Also, like, the horned thing, like with the little thing in its hands and going in circles like they're playing and laughing in the middle of this town, not caring if anybody saw them. Like, excuse me, but I will not live there. I will not be living there. Anyway, what do you guys think?
A guy I'll call Sam sent me an email, and he says he believes he encountered a non-human entity during the last solar eclipse in Chicago. He said this happened on April 8th, 2024. He had gone to the grocery store to pick up a birthday cake for his stepdaughter's birthday that weekend, and he was driving home. He knew it was an eclipse day, and he said he remembers seeing everyone come outside their houses and wear those strange glasses so that they could look up at the sky, but he wasn't overly excited about it, and it passed as he drove. He said it got dark for about 20 seconds, and then everything resumed to normal. He pulls up outside of his house, parks his car, and steps outside. Brought in one round of groceries and came back outside. And as he came back outside, he left the main door open, but there was still the exterior glass door to separate him from his home. And inside the door, he could see his dog sitting, watching him go back out to his car to grab the cake and a pair of gym shoes that were on the floor of his car. But as he reached down to pick up the gym shoes, he noticed movement, like someone coming toward him. He said he lives on School Street, and the movement was coming from northern direction toward Henderson Street, if you are familiar with the area. Grabbed the shoes and immediately turned to face whoever was coming toward him, because he said he noticed, even in his peripheral vision, that whoever was coming toward him was walking with an unusual gait. His initial thought was this was a man that was jogging toward him, but he quickly realized that that was not the case, because this person was taking strides as if they were walking in a relaxed way, but they were covering an amount of distance as if they were running. He said the best way to describe what was happening was it was as if you were watching someone on a moving conveyor belt at the airport. If you've ever been on one, you know that you take normal steps, but you move at a much faster pace. This was that, although this person was moving at a much faster pace than even these airport walkways. The speed at which this being is moving alarms him, so he immediately looks at this person's feet to see if maybe they're on skates, just something, anything to explain how this person is moving at the speed in which they're moving, but he doesn't see anything. They're wearing normal shoes. He said the distance from where he stood to this person should have taken about 20 seconds if this person was walking normally, but this person reached the sidewalk in front of his home in about 5 seconds flat. This being stopped walking on the sidewalk directly between Sam and his home. Sam was filled with a sense of dread. He remembers feeling astonished and confused and looking toward the direction from which this being came and squinting at the intersection, thinking, what is happening? He looks back at this being, and the first thing he noticed was that this thing was tall. He said he stands at 6 feet. This thing was easily 7 foot tall. Also noticed that from where he stood on the curb with the cake in one hand and a pair of gym shoes in the other, he noticed that between him and this being, whatever it was sort of like a blur, like when there is a heat wave and the water's evaporating and there's sort of a haze, like a mirage in the desert. He noticed that between him and whatever this was. That haze didn't seem to be anywhere else on the street besides immediately between him and this being. And besides that, it wasn't hot out. This was April. Besides that, he noticed that this being was very lanky, very pale. It was dressed in all black, including the hood that was pulled over its head, but its hands and face were as pale as porcelain. His features were largely androgynous, and he said he was actually reminded of some characters from Lord of the Rings. He mentioned Powder and Smeagol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those correctly, but that was where his mind went. From where he stood about 10 feet away, this thing didn't face him, but he could see its side profile, and he didn't notice any hair. But then this thing turned to face his home. And remember, the door was wide open and his dog was still sitting inside the glass exterior door, not barking, just looking. And he said his dog Lola is a lab mix. She barks at everything, but she didn't move. She just stared at whatever this was. Then this being leaned forward at about a 30-degree angle and began to whistle at his dog. What he heard sent chills down his spine because the whistle that came out was not a normal human whistle. He said it had a rhythm and a tune, almost as if it was a single note from a music box. He described it as being crystal clear, as sharp, and harmonic even. At this point, because it was messing with his dog, he thought, I have to intervene, and he closed his car door. And as he did, this thing sharply to look at him, and when it did, he noticed the features, and they were sickly, and the nose was too small for the face, and it smiled a wide smile that reminded him of the Joker. He noticed bulging blue veins on its forehead and that its eyes had no whites. They were just beady little eyes that seemed too close together. And its face was skin on bone. He said its skin was so translucent you could see its skull through its skin. I wanted to be clear that this was not someone who may be on a substance. This was not anything that even resembled a human once it smiled. And besides that, he says his neighborhood is filled with cops and firemen, and it's not that those things couldn't happen there, but that is also unlikely. And just as quickly as it smiled at him, it closed its mouth and it glided toward Belmont Avenue, which is about 2 blocks south of where he stood. It reached that intersection in, again, under 5 seconds, and it moved in the same way, gliding almost with its arms swaying, moving too quickly on the pavement for normal walking to explain. At that point, he decided he was going to go into his house because what else is there to do? But he said he only stood about 15 steps from his car to his front door, but those 15 steps felt like 100. His legs felt like they were filled with cement. As he moved toward the door, he said he felt numb and floating. He says he has a beard, and even the hairs in his beard felt like they were lifted somehow, like a strange static had come over his entire body. The first thing he noticed when he got in the house was that he didn't see his dog, and his dog is always excited to see him, so he looked around for her and he found her curled up in a ball behind the couch. He still felt drained though, so he walked into the kitchen, put the cake down and his shoes, and took a seat because he said he still just didn't feel right, and the room felt like it was moving around him. But after about 20 seconds, everything went dark and then came back to normal. He could hear music playing from upstairs, and the lights resumed to their normal brightness, and he went back out in the living room, and his dog was wagging her tail as if she was completely normal again too. Went back to the glass exterior door and looked outside, and everything looked normal. But then he called his wife, who was at work, and he said, hey, can you check the Ring camera footage for me? I parked about 2:10 p.m. Will you check it, watch it for about a minute, and then call me back? She says, sure, no problem. I'll call you back. She hangs up the phone. She calls him back a few minutes later. She says, I watched it. It looks normal. It's just you bringing the groceries in. Why? What's up? And he says, will you watch it again? Will you send me the video? And she goes, I'm really busy at work. I'll check it again when I get home. And she gets home that day around 4 p.m. She got home from work. They watched the footage over and over again. And he even made her check the tablet because all the camera showed was him parking the car, coming up, bringing around her groceries in and going back out. But as soon as he opens up the door to retrieve the cake and the pair of gym shoes, the footage goes blurry. The camera goes back to normal, showing him walking up the walkway, holding the cake and the pair of shoes. So all that's missing from the tape is the time from which this thing reached him on the sidewalk and whistled at his dog. He said they ruled out battery malfunctions and they even ran some tests, which he made her go outside and stand in front of the camera, and every single time it worked in perfect order. Still doesn't know what exactly he saw, but that's his story. And he says he has a few ideas as to why this thing targeted his house because he doesn't believe it was random. First of all, it was an eclipse that day, and he says that he knows that there's some correlation between eclipses and the supernatural. But besides that, the relationship between him and his wife at the time was not good. He's not sure if the negative energy from their relationship called something in. And if it's not that, he said that his stepdaughter, who he was bringing the cake in for, has been struggling for a while with some mental disorders. Her history with psychiatric hospitals runs deep, and he said to him it seems like it's something more than a chemical imbalance, though he didn't want to give too many identifying details just to protect her privacy. His theory is that there is something going on with her that is deeper than a chemical imbalance in her brain. What do you think he saw? Has anyone ever seen something similar or heard of something similar? The only other detail that he shared was that this thing reminded him of like 90s CGI, but in real life in front of him. And if you all want to see the ring camera footage, he offered to send it. So let me know and I will get back to him. And if there's enough interest, I'll post that too.
Apparently, the Appalachian Mountains is haunted. I am back with another spooky story. So we're gonna call the person who submitted this story James. James worked as a surveyor in the Appalachian Mountains. So his job was to mark property lines, document trails that most people haven't walked in decades. There was 4 of them together on the job. They would spend days at a time miles away from the nearest road. So before their first trip, one of the older guys pulled James aside. The guy told him, if you hear someone calling your name out here, don't answer until you see them. James really didn't believe in any of that stuff anyway. He just kind of laughed, but the guy who was warning him didn't laugh. He figured that maybe it's just another creepy mountain superstition. James says the first few days were normal. The one thing that James did find creepy was how quiet the forest would suddenly go. It's as though something was coming, and every single animal, you would hear crickets, birds chirping. Suddenly, it would just go dead quiet, where you can hear a pin drop in the forest. Sometimes the woods would go completely silent for like 10 to 15 minutes. Crew leader called it dead air. Everybody hated that. It was as though something frightening was coming any second now. On the 4th day, they actually split into teams. James was walking with his co-worker. We're gonna call him Marcus. So Marcus was only about 20 feet behind James, or at least that's what James thought. So James heard Marcus say, "Hold up." And James turned around. Nobody was there. James yelled out for Marcus. Nothing. Then he heard him again. This time, the voice sounded like it was coming from further down the mountain. And it sounded like Marcus asking him, "Come here for a second." This sounded exactly like Marcus. Same inflection, same sound, everything. So James starts walking towards it, towards the voice. But suddenly, he feels somebody grab his backpack. It was Marcus. Turns around and Marcus is there. And it looked like Marcus's face had gone completely white. Whispered to James, "I've been trying to catch up to you for 5 minutes. Who were you talking to?" So at this point, Marcus is just trying to process. So he doesn't even answer him. He doesn't say anything. So James is like, you know what? Let's just keep walking. It probably was Marcus that was calling for him. As they're walking, they hear one of their co-workers from the other team yell, "Run!" At this point, they both heard it, and it does sound exactly like their other co-worker on the other team on the other side. As they hear that co-worker yell, "Run!" dead air thing happens again. The forest goes completely silent. No crickets, no birds singing, no chirping, just quiet. Suddenly, they hear what sounds like galloping coming from behind them. It sounded like a bunch of big, heavy animals just chasing after them. So they took off running. After what felt like 20 minutes of chasing and running, they finally got back to one of their station cars. They got inside of the car. After about 2 minutes, the forest came back alive. Suddenly, you can hear birds chirping again, etc. The interesting thing is, interestingly enough, at the end of the shift, asked their other coworker if it was their voice that actually told them to run. The other coworker said no. As a matter of fact, the other co-workers were actually working quite the distance from where James and Marcus were working. So there's no way that, even if they did yell run, no way that James and Marcus would be able to hear them. James says that he has plenty of stories working there. That was one of the scariest times of his life. Didn't believe in dark and mysterious stuff before. After working the Appalachian Mountains, went from not believing to being a guy with plenty of stories. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you're following me for more spooky content.
The person that sent me the story called it, "I vanished for 18 hours. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. I still can't explain what happened, and honestly, I don't expect anyone to believe me. We will believe you. That is our whole thing here, boo. I was 15 years old when my mom and I got into a huge argument one Saturday afternoon. I was so upset that I grabbed my phone and my earbuds and I walked out of the house at exactly 2:30 p.m. I know the time because I looked at my phone before I left, and I kept checking it while I was listening to music. I walked to the small park near my house to cool off, sat down on a bench, and after a little while, a girl who looked like around my age came over and asked if she could sit with me. She had long, dark brown hair and was wearing a long, cream-colored dress that looked kind of old-fashioned. We ended up talking for about an hour about music, school, books, and just random life stuff. I remember checking my phone several times to skip songs and to make sure that I wasn't staying out too long because I knew my mom would still be mad. Eventually, I stood up to leave and the girl smiled and said, "You should probably go now." I thought nothing of it, said goodbye, and started walking home. The walk only took about 10 minutes and everything seemed completely normal until I turned onto my street and I saw multiple police cars parked outside my house. When I walked through the front door, my mom burst into tears and hugged me while two police officers immediately started asking where I had been. Confused, I told them I'd just been at the park for a little over an hour. They all looked at me like I had said something insane. One of the officers asked me what day I thought it was, and when I answered, he quietly looked at my mom before telling me that I'd been missing for 18 hours. Apparently, I had walked out of the house at 2:30 the previous afternoon and hadn't come home until the next morning. My mom had reported me missing, search teams had been looking for me all night, neighbors had been questioned, and everyone thought something horrible had happened. The weirdest part was that my phone made no sense. My battery had only dropped about 20%, my music app showed that I'd only been listening for around an hour and a half, and my recently played songs matched exactly what I remember hearing. When I asked if anyone had talked to the girl that I met at the park, the officer said that no one matching that description had ever been seen there, and security footage from a nearby camera only showed me entering and leaving the park completely alone. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened because to me, it felt like a normal afternoon, but to everyone else, I had disappeared for 18 hours. The end! Okay, what happened? Because normally in this scenario, when there is such a time gap, like you were gone for this many hours, I would say that you were abducted by aliens. It was an alien abduction experience. But that's also normally accompanied by like seeing a craft, something weird happening, seeing something weird or whatever. But I would say if you were gone for that long, I would normally say alien abduction. But clearly you were not taken by aliens. You walked to the park and you were chatting with a girl. And the fact that you didn't know who this girl was, she was chatting with you. And then she was like, "You should probably go now." Like, that's what I don't understand. You should probably go now. I wonder if that was like some sort of spirit or entity or being that was keeping you in like this weird time bubble. And then was like, you know what, you should probably go because she knew like it had been like 18 hours in your actual timeline. But like the little time bubble that you guys were in, it had only been a little bit of time. Maybe she was keeping you there on purpose. Maybe she was preventing something bad from happening to you if you left earlier. You said that her dress looked old, like kind of old fashioned. I wonder if she was like a ghost. But if she was like some just like random spirit old ghost, why would she be keeping you there? This is wild. I honestly am not really sure. These are like the theories that I can think of. Do you guys have any other idea? Like what could have happened? Please let us know in the comments. And thank you so much for sharing.
Do you guys want to hear a scary story? I don't know if you guys notice. Is this glitching real time as I'm about to tell a scary story? Because there's not a candle or anything lit in my apartment. Okay, good vibes. For quick context, I used to babysit for a family that lived in an extremely haunted house. There's two girls. The oldest one I call Luna, the youngest one I call Aura to protect their identities. But they basically had imaginary friends that were actually demons, more so the oldest daughter, but one of the strongest demonic entities in the house, who was her very close imaginary friend, was named Pete. Now, Pete was horrific in a lot of ways. And this is one of my hide and seek stories I have from that house. So this was actually in early days when I first started babysitting them, and I still was kind of learning the ropes. I didn't have as much experience with these entities in the home as I grew to have over time. And Luna, the oldest daughter, wanted to play hide and seek. Now at this point, the Aura was still a baby, so she couldn't like play hide and seek really. But she was down in her little, I forget what they're called, like the little bouncy things that you strap them into, you know, you buckle them in and they kind of rock on the floor.
And her mama told me like to put her down for her naps and that she napped the best in there. So Aura's sleeping and the oldest one wants to do a little hide and seek. Now, for many reasons, I'm terrified of this game, especially this game in in their home. But I obliged. I'm like, okay, baby. 'Cause these kids were so cute, guys. On a side note, I had such a hard time telling them no, and they were going through so much that I just love them. So I break. I'm like, okay, fine, let's play hide and seek, right? So we play hide and seek, and obviously I'm the seeker. I count to however much I counted. I don't remember. This was, God, probably almost like 15 years ago. Just crazy. I'm so old. However, I digress. So we're playing hide and seek, right? And as I'm like looking around for her, and I just am always so uneasy. I remember this day I was uneasy because I was seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. I was kind of hearing things that weren't there. I know I sound crazy, but if you have had experience with paranormal things, you know this is actually more common, sadly, than it seems in a house with such high activity and strong activity. So I'm looking around, and I didn't want to check her room because I was so afraid of her room because she was so attached to this entity at this point and thinking it was her imaginary friend in the form of a little boy. And so she was just obsessed, always talking to it. She always wanted to be around Pete all the time. And so I didn't like her room because I felt like he was living in there pretty much full time. That's where his favorite place to be was. However, I'm like standing, because the way their rooms were it was like at the end of a hallway, right? And then it was Luna's room, Aura's room, right across from each other. And both the doors are open. So I walk by Aura's room, and I always would just like listen, because Luna's still young. She's not the best hide and seek player in the world, right? Like, she's gonna giggle and stuff. So I just listen out for her because I was scared of the house. I didn't want to play hide and seek because I was playing hide and seek with demons too. And anyways, I'm standing like in that little gap in between their doors, and I hear something from the closet in her room. I'm like, oh, I gotcha. And I'm walking over to the closet. I'm like, okay, Luna, like, I found you. Oh God, this gives me chills to think about. And I hear like breathing from the other side, lightly. Then the breathing gets heavier. It gets more intense, and it starts sounding raspy. And my ear is like damn near pressed against the closet, and I'm just like, nope, absolutely not. And I walk out of the room, walk my ass out. I'm like, that's not Luna. Walk out of the room, and as I walk out of the room, I hear like a thump, and the closet door was open. I literally remember going to the end of the hallway and saying, Luna, emergency, come out now. And she came out from a completely different room, which was, made me feel great, so much more safe, of course. And I just remember, she's like, what's wrong? And I tried to always handle these situations so well, even though I'm freaking out. And yeah, I think that was the last time we played hide and seek. After that, I'll never forget just how the breathing got more intense, more loud, and more nasty. It sounded like this entity was gasping for air. But yeah, be careful when you play hide and seek, because you never know if you have an additional player. You never know if something's gonna want to play with you. So yeah, just be very careful. Sweet dreams.
If you watched my last video, Ashley just sent me something that she never showed anyone else before. And the original video of her experience and new photos of the footprints. And after seeing these, I'm even less convinced that this was an animal. So if you missed part one, here's what happened in short form. Ashley reached out to me about something that happened back in either 2013 or 2014 while she was living in Greenbelt, Maryland. And it was actually just a few miles from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. She had just gotten home from work around 11 at night after this massive snowstorm rolled through. And as she walked toward the back door, something massive jumped off the roof, and she never actually saw it because a wall and like this awning had blocked her view, but she heard every bit of it, and it sounded massive. Whatever landed hit a pile of brake rotors, car parts, and heavy steel in her backyard with enough force that she immediately turned and ran. Then, instead of hearing footsteps, she heard it leap away. One gigantic jump after another. And what she found the next morning is why we are here again today. Now, after I posted that video, Ashley reached back out to me a couple of days later, and she said that there was something that she'd forgotten to include. Not only did she still have the original photographs, she still had the video that she filmed the morning after. And honestly, these are far stranger than anything that I expected. I'll show them first. I'll show the first photo here. And Ashley wears a woman's size shoe, 9 shoe. She placed her foot beside one of the impressions because she knew that nobody would believe how large they actually were otherwise. And according to her, each print measured around 14 inches long and roughly 8 inches wide. And that's already unusual in itself. But the size isn't what caught my attention. I want you to look really, really closely. You see those circles? They're almost perfectly rounded, layered inside one another, almost resembling like suction cups. And I've never personally seen snow impressions quite like that. I mean, I'm from New York. I've seen plenty of snow and plenty of impressions. Nothing like that. Maybe there's a completely normal explanation for it, but maybe there isn't. And I'm going to let you decide. So Ashley told me that these weren't scattered randomly throughout the yard either. They followed a path almost exactly where she remembered hearing those enormous jumps the night before. One and then another and then another. Like whatever had made them wasn't walking. It was covering huge distances with every single leap. And then they simply stopped right near the entrance to the garage. There was no drag marks, no smaller animal tracks. There was no continuation into the woods. There was literally nothing. It was almost as though whatever made them was just simply gone, just vanished. And then Ashley sent me the original video and the one that she recorded the morning after everything had happened. And I'm gonna let the footage speak for itself, and I'm gonna show the video at the end uninterrupted for you to decide. And that is exactly why I wanted to share this with you all again, because, you know, I'm not here claiming that this was a cryptid or an alien or something supernatural. I can't verify Ashley's story, and neither can you. And I'm simply showing you the evidence exactly as she sent it to me. Because according to her, something heavy jumped off her roof and it landed only a few feet away from her. It crashed into a pile of solid metal and it escaped in enormous leaps and bounds. And when daylight came, these were waiting for her in the fresh snow. So now I want to ask you, what do you think made these footprints? Because the question that keeps bothering me and coming back to me isn't, you know, what they are, it's where did they go? Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and here's the video.
It's not the darkness of the Pine Barrens that get to me. It never really was. It's the thought of what the darkness might actually be holding. And after November, I stopped thinking of it as just a thought. One thing that I think people should know about the Pine Barrens is that it has very similar rules to the Appalachian Mountains. Considering this is 1.1 million acres of dense forest and swamps, it is no surprise that people can go missing. But the thing about this area is that a lot of locals blame a particular creature for this. Locals recommend no whistling, no going out there after dark, and no going towards something if you hear it screeching. Now, do I personally believe in the Jersey Devil? No clue. It doesn't seem proportionally accurate to me that something like this would exist. No offense if it does. However, I did receive one of the most chilling stories from a professional wildlife biologist that does work out in the Pine Barrens. And he stated that he saw something that he cannot explain. For the purpose of the story, he's just gonna go by Dr. Aaron. I've gone back and forth about sending this story for weeks now, partially because I have a professional reputation to think about. You don't get invited back to give talks at the State Wildlife Conference after you tell people that you saw something in the woods that you can't explain. And partially because writing it down means admitting how much of it I still think about. So here's the whole thing. In November of 2019, I was contracted to run a series of nighttime acoustics and thermal surveys in the Bass River State Forest, specifically looking for barred owl activity ahead of a proposed logging adjustment. It's unglamorous work. You hike to a fixed point, you set up the directional mic and a handheld thermal scope, and you sit very still for 4 to 6 hours, logging heat signatures and call responses. And most nights you get raccoons, deer, the occasional fox, and if you're lucky, an owl or two calling back to a playback recording. I'd done maybe a dozen of these surveys that season already. I knew the drill, I knew the cold, and I knew the way that your eyes start playing tricks on you around hour 3. I knew to write probable, deer obscured, instead of guessing wildly at every ambiguous blob on the scope. 20 years in this field teaches you humility about what you can and can't identify in the dark. That night, I was set up about a quarter mile off a fire road in a pitch pine with a bog to my left. Clear sky, cold enough that my breath was fogging the eyepiece if I got too close to it. Around 11:40 p.m., I logged a heat signature at the edge of my thermal's range, maybe about 8 yards out, up in a canopy, which was already strange. Owls perch high, sure, but the signature was too high and too warm-blooded diffuse for a bird that size. My first note, and I still have the recorder audio me saying it out loud, was possible bear, elevated, unlikely lodging as anomaly. Bears don't climb up pines like that, and they definitely don't stay still 11 feet up a trunk for the better part of 6 minutes, which is how long I watched it before it moved. And when it moved, it didn't climb down, it dropped. Not a fall, it was lowering itself with intention. And the moment that it hit the ground, the shape on my scope resolved into something bipedal. 2 legs, an upright torso, and then it did something that still bothers me more than anything else that night. It paused, stood there. Heat signature steady, not moving for maybe around 15 seconds, the exact amount of time you'd expect something to take if they were listening. I want to be precise here because precision is the only thing that kept me sane about this. I did not see red eyes, I did not see wings. Despite what people always want to hear when I tell this story, what I saw through a thermal scope, it renders everything in shifting grayscale blobs of temperature difference, with a heat signature roughly the mass of a large deer, standing on 2 limbs, at a height I estimate badly, I'll admit, at somewhere between 6 and 7 feet. Then it moved through the underbrush that I have personally walked through in daylight. Underbrush dense enough that I've worn waders on it, at a speed that did not slow down for any of it. No snapping branches on my audio recording, no stumbling. It went from standing still to gone in under 4 seconds. And the sound that it left behind, which I probably listened to on tape 200 times, is not a sound that I can match to anything in my professional library of North American wildlife calls. It's not a bird, it's not a candid, it has a strange double quality to it, like 2 registers of the same call layered on top of each other, slightly out of sync. I sat there for another 20 minutes without moving. Then I packed up 10 minutes before my scheduled end time, which I have never done on any other survey in my career. I put down left early personal as the reason in my field log because I didn't want to write down what the real reason was. Here's my professional analysis, for the record, because I think it's important and because I stand behind it. The most likely explanation is a combination of a large bird, possibly a great horned owl, whose size and behavior can be badly misjudged on a thermal at range, flush at an unusual angle, combined with a sensor artifact from a temperature differential between the canopy and the cold night air, and a healthy dose of my own tired brain filling in the gaps between the frames with something coherent. It happens to good experienced surveyors all the time. I've debunked exactly this kind of misidentification for other people's field data more than once, but here's my personal opinion, which I do not stand behind professionally and which I will deny at conferences if anyone brings this up. That is, I have not been back to that specific quarter-mile stretch of Bass River since, despite the fact that my contract required 3 more visits to comparable sites that season, all of which I completed without incident somewhere else in the forest. I told my supervisor I'd rather rotate sites for sampling diversity. That was not the real reason. I still have the audio. I sent it to 2 colleagues off the record, both of whom gave me some version of probably an owl. Weird acoustics, don't worry about it. The same thing I would have told them. Neither of them have asked to hear it a second time. Since getting this email, I have received multiple messages about sightings of the Jersey Devil, or at least what people believe to be the Jersey Devil. A woman by the name of Carol, who's a retired school teacher and lives in Egg Harbor Township, said that she saw something between a land animal and a bird get into her chickens, and the tracks in the mud that were left behind were almost like goat hooves. An anonymous submission from someone who used to live in the Pine Barrens back when they were 11 said that around midnight every night for weeks they heard something between a howl and a screech, and still to this day they could not explain what it is. A student by the name of Jenna, who's a junior at Stockton University but the Atlantic City, New Jersey location, has said that multiple nights after studying she's gone on a drive past the Absecon Lighthouse, seen something flying above it that lands on 2 feet. It appears to be taller than her or any of her friends that have gone with her. There's so many hot spots when it comes to seeing the Jersey Devil, but I really want to go see this lighthouse, and I want to go out to the middle of the Pine Barrens to an abandoned village, because if he's real, what better place to find him? Let's go to Jersey. This is Batso Village, and we are currently in the New Jersey Pine Barrens looking for the Jersey Devil.
Monsters do exist in this world, and that makes us realize just how small our world really is. Have any of you heard of the NCS? That stands for National Cryptid Society. Well, this is a whole new thing for me, and I'm going to tell you a story tonight right out of there. This story was submitted by a man named Ronald from back on August 27th, 2017. Ronald is about 20 years old at the time, and he's living near a small town in Wayne County, West Virginia. This experience took place on a Saturday evening between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. Ronald had been on his way home after a very long drive, and he was pretty close to home, and he slowed down around a really sharp turn, and when he came around the bend, he saw something. He saw this thing step onto the road on all fours. When he first saw it, he thought it was a 500-pound male black bear. He said it was roughly the same size as a male black bear, and there were quite a few around in that area, so that was his first assumption. But then, upon closer inspection, he noticed that it was actually more like a wolf. He said it had a long, bushy tail and pointed ears. He also says it had a canine-like snout and the same body shape as a wolf. It had jet black fur and glowing amber colored eyes. Ronald says that by the time it stepped onto the road, the wolf turned its head towards his direction and stared right at him. So at first, Ronald is ecstatic because he's excited to actually see a wolf in the wild. But at the same time, he realized there was something rather off about this encounter because there shouldn't be a wolf out there, not this big. And the more he thought about it, there shouldn't even be any wolves anywhere near there in West Virginia anymore, since he said the timber wolves that used to live in the woods there were killed off. So Ronald's thinking, was it the state government, like secretly using conservation efforts to repopulate wolves there in that state? Then he's thinking, did a pack of wolves escape from a wildlife sanctuary and somehow find their way to this area? But even still, if that's the case, how did this thing get so freaking huge? He said not only did the abnormal size catch his attention, but so did the look it had in its eyes. He said it looked different from the eyes of any canine he had ever seen before or known of. They looked much more intelligent than anything he's ever seen. And then he said, but whatever theory he had to support any rational explanation for this unusual sighting was immediately shot away when this creature did something he will never forget for the rest of his life. It is something that still haunts his soul to this very day. He said even from inside his car, he could hear what sounded like bones popping loudly. And to his absolute shock, he watched this wolf place its hand on top of the car hood and raise itself off the ground and stand upon two legs. This wasn't a paw placed on his car hood. This was a hand. When the wolf stood up in the headlights and the headlights hit it square on, that is when Ronald was able to get a really good look at it. He said it was easily 8 feet tall and had to weigh approximately 600 to 650 pounds or more. That the jet black fur it was covered in seemed quite feral in his opinion because it almost looked like it wasn't cleaning himself that much. He then reiterates the long bushy tail and the two glowing amber yellow eyes. He said, to my shock, it was more than a wolf standing on its hind legs. It had a human-like torso. From the waist up, it appeared very muscular, and it had broad shoulders and long forearms, much longer than those of a normal human being. He could see the muscles of this wolf man pulsating with each breath it took, especially in the headlights. Also said he had these dexterous hands that looked almost like raccoon hands, but it had elongated fingers and long jet black claws on each fingertip. They look like they can use it to easily manipulate any kind of prey in its clutches, and they look like they could easily have ripped him into shreds. He also said its hind legs resembled more of that of a dog or a wolf. He could easily tell this because they were bent backwards and they had massive paws for feet. He said from the looks of it, it was almost like it was standing up on its toes more than its feet. Lots of insane detail here. But its massive head was similar to that of a wolf or a large German shepherd, but bigger in proportion, with those pointed ears that had tufts of fur at each tip. He also said it had a long muzzle with great big fangs gouging out of the front of its snout. The fangs almost had an eerie resemblance to that of a saber-toothed cat, but the rest of it just looked like a werewolf, or what you would imagine a werewolf to look like. As he said before, the eyes looked extremely intelligent, far smarter than any animal he has ever come across or known in that neck of the woods. But he also said that they had a feeling that told him the eyes were something that spelled out pure evil. Okay, so get this. He is now overcome with an overwhelming sense of dread as this thing walks around to the side of his car and pulls on the freaking door handle with its hand, like trying to get inside the door. Okay, so luckily the doors were locked and the windows were up. This thing gave a disappointed grunt and then like frowned almost, and then walked around to the other side of the car and tried that door handle. You guys, I would have freaking been long gone. He must have been absolutely paralyzed with fear for sitting there through this, letting this occur. He said he feels like this thing, a creature that shouldn't even exist, yet is standing right there in front of his car, was a true ruler of the forest. Like, we as humans were nothing compared to what it can really do. He knew very well that this thing, if it wanted to, could have easily ripped that door off and shred him to pieces. He also said that obviously this creature knew that he knew that the creature was capable of doing this. Like, everybody knows. Ronald said that as if he was being divinely protected, this creature, instead of attacking him like it easily could have, just bared its teeth at him, let out this defiant snarl before walking around to the front of the car, crossing the road on its hind legs in just 2 steps, and disappeared off into the night. Now, he did say just before it completely did go out of sight, it turned around to look at Ronald one more time. He said in that moment, he looked over its shoulder and he noticed 5 more pairs of those same glowing amber eyes staring back at him. Some were up on their hind legs tall, and others must have been down on all 4. But none of them ever revealed themselves from the darkness. So eventually he like snaps out of it and he peels out of there. He goes home and he tells his parents what happened. And of course they're chalking it up to, oh, it must have been a bear, but he knows what he saw. It actually caused him to isolate himself for at least 2 months after that. He was scared shitless. He said he had never cried so much in his entire life. He also has since then done some research and he has found so many people experiencing the same kinds of things. So what are your thoughts, you guys? Drop them in the comments. I'm running out of time here, but if you want to share your own cryptid story, I would love to hear it. If you're interested in Creepy Storytime merch, check out the link in my bio. And if you're new here, follow for more Creepy Storytime.
Cantinflas and his mermaids. Let's talk about it. Mario Moreno, or Cantinflas, was one of the most successful and well-known entertainers in all of Mexican history. And even though he passed away in 1993, people continue to remember him to this day. Cantinflas had a beachfront mansion in Acapulco, Mexico, and he allegedly became fascinated by mermaids after hearing the way that fishermen talked about them. They would describe seeing these beautiful women with long hair and singing voices that were almost hypnotic. And they would claim to see these mermaids swimming around the coastline of Cantinflas' beachfront property. So it's said that over time, all of these legends and stories eventually convinced Cantinflas that mermaids truly existed. The rumors claim that he began spending endless nights near the shoreline, speaking towards the ocean as if somebody could speak back to him. Other rumors also claim that he would leave offerings for these mermaids, like jewelry and gifts, near the water. And one of the most famous aspects of this legend is that Cantinflas would try to capture these mermaids. According to the legend, he would build these underwater tunnels that connected to the ocean and led to his own property. There are even rumors that Cantinflas would have fishermen capture these mermaids for him and they would deliver them to him. And apparently, only trusted employees knew where these mermaids were. Aside from this, there was also a pretty popular legend about a young boy who lived in the neighborhood. The legend states that one day the little boy mysteriously disappeared near the shore, and apparently Cantinflas blamed the mermaids and even warned locals away from that area of the water because they had grown angry. And this entire legend about Cantinflas and his mermaid remained a local legend only in Acapulco until a few years ago. A TikToker named Carlos Name posted a video claiming that he had received evidence about Cantinflas and the existence of his mermaids. His biggest piece of evidence being a photo album that somebody had anonymously sent him containing over 50 photographs of real mermaids on his property, and it featured images like this one. And through that video, more and more people started discovering the famous legend of Cantinflas and his mermaids, myself included. And eventually, Cantinflas' own grandson publicly responded to all of these rumors, and he essentially rejected this entire narrative. He went on to say that the whole story was fabricated and that the photos provided weren't even on his grandfather's property. It's still a widely discussed topic, and a lot of people have left both the legend and the alleged evidence up to their own interpretation. So what do you think? Do you think it could have some validity to it, or do you think it's nothing more than a story?
You wake up because every car alarm is going off on your street at the exact same time. So you get up and look out your bedroom window to see that every single one of your neighbors is standing inside their house looking at yours. Nobody is looking at their cars, and there's a woman across the street with a handwritten sign that says, "Stay away from your hallway." And then the man next door points to your second floor, and you live alone, but your bedroom door is open. You know that you closed it before going to sleep, and then your phone receives a text from an unknown number. It shows you standing at your window right now, only the photo comes from behind you. Across the street, the woman with the sign drops her sign and puts up a new one that says, "Pretend you're asleep." The car alarms stop and your whole street goes silent. Then one of the floorboards in your hallway creaks, and you see one of your neighbors shaking their head, warning you not to move. Someone stops outside your doorway and then whispers, "I know you saw them." Your bed is 6 feet away, and the window in front of you opens onto the roof above your porch, and your closet door is already slightly open. What's your next move?
The thing with mimics is a lot of people don't even realize that they have encountered one. It's only until later when they kind of piece things together that they realize maybe that person wasn't real. Now, this is a story out of Los Angeles. There was this older man named Sam, and Sam had this very large house. He decided, since he had all this space, that he was going to look for a roommate. So he puts an ad in the newspaper, and he ends up finding this young med student who is going to med school and needed a room. So he decides to rent to this girl, and she moves in. After a few months of living together, one day his roommate says, "Hey Sam, when you got a moment, can I talk to you?" And Sam says, "Well, I got a moment now, like, what's wrong?" And she goes, "Well, I don't want to come off the wrong way, but your friend keeps scaring me." And he goes, "What do you mean, friend?" And she goes, "Well, your friend that you have over, like, I see him sometimes in the hallway walk into your bedroom." And Sam is like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't have any friends really, and I wouldn't have them over at the house." And she goes, no, you're tall, very tall and skinny friend, and that's kind of gangly and walks funny. I see him go into your bedroom. And Sam is just, really confused about who she's talking about because he never had anyone over at the house. So Sam goes, "Well, what did he, what could you remember what he looked like?" And she goes, "Well, it was too dark to see in the hallway. So all I know is he was just really tall and kind of walking funny." So Sam, just kind of is like, okay, I don't know what she's talking about. So the next night, Sam's in his bedroom, and his roommate, she comes in his room and is like, "Is it okay if I talk to you for a little bit? I'm kind of nervous about, yesterday talking to you and finding out you didn't have a friend that was coming over because I've been seeing someone." And Sam's like, "Yeah, absolutely, that's all right." So they start talking, and, she goes on to tell Sam how when she was a young girl, she had this friend that she called Mr. Guy. And she said Mr. Guy was this very tall, skinny man who would, play with her and hang out with her. And she said that, like, when she seen his friend, it reminded her of her imaginary friend, Mr. Guy. And so, like, they end up kind of connecting through her telling him about her childhood stories. So every night, this roommate would come into Sam's room and they would talk for hours, and he enjoyed it because he was, alone. After a few months, she comes to Sam one day and says, Sam, like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm going to be moving. My boyfriend has, a new house, and I'm going to move in with him. And so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move out. And Sam goes, well, that's okay. You've been a really good roommate. And I really appreciate our talks every night. And she looks at Sam, like, kind of confused. She goes, what do you mean our talks every night? And Sam goes, well, when you've been coming in my room every night and we've talked about your family and this and that. And she's like, I haven't been coming in your room. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And, well, Sam goes, well, how do I know this and this and this from your childhood? And she's like, yeah, that happened, but, like, I don't know how you would know that because I haven't been coming in your room talking to you. And then it clicked to Sam, like, wait a second. I remember when she said she's seen my friend walking into my bedroom. Like, was that the person coming into my room talking to me? A lot of people don't realize that rest areas can be haunted too. Now, one of the most haunted rest areas in the United States sits between the border of Idaho and Montana on Interstate 90. It's this beautiful rest area that even has individual private stalls. However, it is very creepy. In fact, in 2021, there were 2 students who went out hiking right next to this rest area, and their bodies were found several weeks later. They had apparently committed suicide. And this place is notorious for strange things happening. Now, one story that I heard from this rest area was there was a truck driver, and he pulls in one night, and he thinks it's odd because he notices, like, there is no vehicles there at the rest area. He's the only one there. So he gets out of his truck and starts heading towards the building to go use the restroom when he sees a person staring out the window. And the person just turns and then just walks away. So he gets inside the building and he finds one of the private stalls, and he goes in there and closes the door and everything. And as he sits down, right, about 20, 30 seconds later, he hears, the door jiggling, and someone's trying to get in the door. And he's like, hey, I'm in here. And it stops. And about, another 20, 30 seconds later, it starts again. Someone's trying to get in there. So he pulls his pants up and runs to the door, opens it, looks, there's absolutely no one there. He goes outside to the rest area. There's no cars there yet. And he looks around the entire parking lot. No one's outside. Well, he sits in his truck and waits until someone else comes, and it happens to be another truck driver. And he sees the truck driver get out of his vehicle. He goes inside, and about a couple minutes later, this truck driver comes running out with a scared look on his face. So he waves this truck driver over to his truck, and he's like, hey, did you have something weird happen to you in there? And the guy's like, I'm leaving. I was in the bathroom, and there was a woman standing in the mirror, but she wasn't in the bathroom. So he, gets in his truck. This guy gets in his truck, and they get out of there. And that's just one of the many creepy things that happen at this rest area. There's another story about a rest area in Kansas. Now, this guy, he's driving. It starts to get late. He's getting a little tired. And he's on kind of this back rural highway. And he's like, I need to get off the road and get some sleep. So he sees a sign for a rest area, and he pulls in off the interchange and starts driving up to this old-looking rest area from the 50s, 60s kind of look. And he notices all the vehicles that are parked in the parking lot are vehicles from like the 50s and the 60s. And he's like, is there some kind of retro thing going on today or something? So he gets out, and he notices there's all these people there, but they're all kind of just wandering around aimlessly, almost like they're, zombies. And they're just kind of, walking really strange. So he goes inside this old building, and there's a woman in there, and she's turned around. And he goes up to this woman, he taps her on the back, and he says, "Is there like some kind of retro thing going on in town?" She turns around, and that's when he sees that she has no eyes. And he's freaked out at this point. He runs out, gets in his car, and starts driving as fast as he can. And as he's leaving the interchange, his tire gets damaged on the curve. And a couple miles down the road, he ends up having to pull over and call a tow truck. Now, the tow truck comes, and they get him all hooked up to the truck. The tow truck driver's like, "Where did this happen at?" And he goes, "At the rest area a couple miles back." And the truck driver the tow truck driver looks at him and is like, "There is no rest area around here for 80 miles, so I don't know what you're talking about." And so after he gets his vehicle fixed, he drives back to this rest area, except where the rest area should have been, it was just a big open field, and it looked like something had been there before, but it was torn down. And these are some of the creepy stories at rest areas across the United States.
Here are more spooky stories that I found in my TikTok comments. Let's go! A little bit spooky, but when lockdown started, I moved in with my boyfriend and roommate. Their apartment is next to a cemetery. At first I felt uneasy about the bathroom, but I figured it was just nerves about moving in. But for the first 6 to 9 months, I would see a shadow figure from the corner of my eye peeking around our door frame in random corners. One night while I was sleeping, I felt something tugging at the blanket by my feet. I woke up to see a small dark figure about the size of a toddler standing there. It then ran over to my side of the bed and put its face about an inch from mine. I was more annoyed at being woken up than scared, so I just rolled on my side towards it and then went back to sleep. Never had it happen since. One night at my grandma's, I was 12 and was going to the basement to go get her a towel, and I heard a baby toddler crying in the far back of the basement, and so I walked towards it and yelled, "Who's crying down here?" And then silence. So I rushed back up the stairs and told my grandparents. My grandpa grabbed a flashlight and headed down there to check, but we remembered that we had no kids at the house at all. He ended up finding no one. I still remember that night, and it still freaks me out. I used to live next to a cemetery, and when I was in high school, my friends and I were bored and decided to explore. We came across a grave that was designed for 2 people, husband and wife. The wife died in 1950, and the husband's side of the grave was empty. He was buried somewhere else. I was standing right in front of the grave and pointed this out and added, "He's probably buried with his new wife." And my friend responded, "Yeah, that lady must be pissed." And at the word pissed, I remember just being so angry at the husband, like waves of anger, and thinking over and over again, how could he do that? Just so angry. And then my friends yelled my name. They had been walking for a few minutes and didn't realize I was behind them. The moment I stepped away from the grave toward them, I felt all the anger wash off of me like water from the head down. And when I was walking away, I realized that the center of anger wasn't in my chest like it usually is. It was radiating from my ankles. I didn't go back to that cemetery again for 15 years. Anyway, that's the story of how I was briefly possessed by a very angry ghost. When I was in grade 2, my grandpa passed away from kidney failure. 6 months later, my family and I traveled to Kentucky to spread his ashes at a place he used to go. That same day, my mom took a photo of me riding a horse. In the back of the photo, on my shoulder, is my grandpa. He had been dead for 6 months. Here is a better close-up of the photo, and right over her shoulder you can see, I think, his face. But also, I'm so sorry for your loss, but it's really sweet to see that he's always with you. My mom used to listen to these true horror stories that happen to people. One night, she was sleeping when she suddenly opened her eyes, and when she slowly lifted her head, she said she saw a large black figure just watching her. She also keeps her room door open, but it was closed. And then she turned to her walk-in closet and saw that black figure again. She never keeps her closet door open when she's about to sleep. She said that she closed her eyes and laid down, but then she felt that thing going towards my sister who was sleeping beside her, and she said that she loudly screamed and pushed the figure. She could feel it. After that, she woke up and said her closet door was open, even though she swore she closed it before sleeping. I was about 8 months pregnant and was taking a nap while my partner was at work. I live in a bungalow, so I could see the back door through the kitchen from where I was laying in bed. I woke up and saw 3 men in the kitchen talking amongst themselves, looking like robbers. I couldn't move. I couldn't make any noise. I just laid there sobbing, trying to scream. I was panicking. It felt so real. I came around eventually, and it felt like forever, but it was probably only a minute or so. The men were gone, and the door was still locked. That's when I figured out what happened. I've never experienced sleep paralysis before and after, but being pregnant and feeling so helpless was the worst one. When I was about maybe 8 or 9, I used to have this Barney plushie that would talk every time you would push its hand. I was growing up and no longer thought Barney was cool, so I ended up putting it in the closet. A couple of nights after, I woke up in the middle of the night with Barney saying one of its phrases, "You're my special friend." It scared me so bad that I didn't go back to sleep. That morning, I went into my closet to take out the batteries and make sure nothing was pressing on his hand. That night, Barney spoke again, saying, "You're my special friend." That was the end of Barney being in my house because the next morning I threw him away. As always, I love these stories. Okay, bye!
A social media user shared this image captured by a baby monitor in their nursery. Some people saw it as something dark or sinister, while others believe it could be a benevolent presence, but nothing is really certain. I was sent this video from a friend who was dog sitting for someone. They took a video of the dogs to send to the owner, and when the owner saw the video, they asked who else was at the house. I can confirm this video is 100% real and is not edited in any way. Look towards the end of the hallway and tell me it's not a full-blown shadow figure. I went to an event for Day of the Dead in Atlanta. During the event, there was a beautiful prayer that was meant to invoke the spirits. From that moment on, I definitely felt the heavier energy in the air. We enjoyed the event and we took a lot of photos. Later, when we looked through them more carefully, we found something unexpected. In the background, what appears to be a spirit can be seen.
Want to get creeped out? Have you ever heard of the man in the fields ritual? Well, Jessica has a story of someone who tried it and they wind up not being able to complete the ritual in time and spend a terrifying night in their safe room experiencing the man in the fields potentially outside their door. You might want to hear this one.
I'm going to be telling you a story about someone who tried the man in the fields ritual. This guy who decides to play this game, his name is Zach. He bought his first house when he was 18 years old. Really small. He said it was 1 bedroom, 1 bath, kind of like in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
He also said like he bought this house because his mom passed away when he was young, when he was a teenager, and he got an inheritance and used it to buy his first home. So he also says that he's always felt like he's unlucky. Things go wrong. He just feels like he's the most unlucky guy in the world, basically.
One thing after another type deal.
Exactly. So he hears about this ritual and he thinks that like this wouldn't be super hard. I'm a single guy in a tiny house. I can do this. So he decides to do the hour.
Ooh.
So that's the financial safety, physical safety, and
no negative consequences for a whole year.
Yeah, exactly. So he decides I can do this in an hour. No problem. So his safe room, he has a small storage space kind of near his front door. He said it's almost like a big walk-in closet, basically. And it's mostly filled with camping supplies, totes, stuff like that. He set up a cot in there. He put a pillow on the cot, blanket on the cot because he's going to sleep in there. He also put a deadbolt on the inside of the door so that he could lock the door when he was sleeping in there that night.
Smart.
Like he thought ahead. Yeah, he really thought this through. So he starts off with that room. He said it was so quick. He got it done really quickly. Nothing had a whole lot of lids. A couple things he had to close and then he moves on to the living room. He's checking video game cases. He's double checking that all of his windows and everything in the living room is closed. And that's basically all he has to do in the living room.
Okay.
So then he moves on to the bathroom. And by the time he's done the living room, it's 11:20. So then he moves on to the bathroom.
Oh, wow. He's making good time.
He's quick. Yeah. Now he moves on to the bathroom, closes the toilet, closes the drains, caps on like cologne bottles, double checks his 6-in-1 shampoo bottle.
Jesus Christ.
Just double checks all the things that he has in there. That's pretty quick. By the time he's done that, it's 11:30. Like quick. He moves onto the kitchen and he starts with his Tupperware. Every single one of them has a lid, but it takes him longer to do this than it did the last 3 rooms. And then he starts second guessing himself and he's questioning if he has to put the lids on the pots in his drawer under his stove. So he's questioning that. And
you
then,
do, for sure.
For sure.
I'm just saying.
For sure. And then he checks the time. It's 11:51.
Oh, fuck.
He realizes
Did he do his bedroom yet?
No.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
And he realizes he hasn't done his bedroom. There's no possible way that he is going to finish doing this in time. as he realizes this, he feels a freezing cold breath on the back of his neck, and all he can smell now is rotten eggs.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
So he panics. He runs straight to the storage, closes it, deadbolts it. He says he closes his eyes, his mouth, and he's holding his cross, which, oh yeah, he left a cross on the
Right.
BT dubs. And he's holding it on his chest. He has no idea of what time it is. And then he hears the doorknob rattling and shaking so hard that he thought it was going to be ripped right off the hinges. And like at this point, obviously we know it was around 10:51 when he ran in there. So we don't know how long he's been in there. He has no idea when this starts happening.
Oh, fuck.
But he said it feels like he could hear the rattling of the door for hours.
Jesus.
And then he started cold sweating. He's shaking. He's filled with a lot of regret. Another unlucky situation.
Oh, God. Poor guy.
Suddenly, he starts to hear his name being called by his dad.
Oh, no.
But it's not in the right pitch.
Oh, fuck.
And the voice is saying,
oh, God.
Zach, I know you're afraid. You can come out. It's okay. And then it repeats, come out. It's okay. And it repeats that over and over and over. And each time it gets louder and the voice gets deeper and raspier. And he says he has no idea how long that it went on for, but it felt like it was all night. He fell asleep at some point throughout all of this somehow. He woke up the next day, didn't hear anything, came out. He saw that it was 3 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
When he came out and he walked into his kitchen and the living room and just everywhere, he noticed that every single thing that he had previously closed was now open again.
Oh, interesting.
Everything from like living room, bathroom, all of the Tupperwares again.
Right.
There was lids on the floor.
Oh.
Everything. Every single thing that he had closed was now open.
Oh, fuck. That would make me very scared.
So he said after he did this ritual, he stayed in his house for a while, but he said there was just something that had changed. It felt like something was there with him, especially in the evenings. He felt like it was almost too quiet all the time, even more so than it was for him before as like a single guy who lives at home alone. So he ended up selling his home.
Oh, wow.
Moving in with his dad, and he is still currently with his dad and now planning on buying a new home and not planning on doing this again.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, that is terrifying. Wow. No judgment, but he shouldn't have chosen to do the hour.
No.
It's just too risky. No one can finish this in an hour.
There's no way.
And this is why if I'm supposed to be sleeping alone in my bed and I feel something next to me moving around, I'm not sticking around to find out what it is. Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. If you guys have any creepy stories you want me to share, send it to the email that's in my bio, but let's go ahead and get into this story. This lady writes that one morning her husband had to wake up early to go to work, so he got out of bed, got dressed, and left. Days that he had to go to work early, their Great Dane would hop into the bed with her and would sleep there until they woke up in the morning. Great Dane always had the same routine. Hop on the bed, move around, do a couple circles to get comfortable, and then lay down. When her dog would move around, it would just feel like a 150-pound adult was just moving around the bed. But I guess on this one night in particular, the dog had a hard time getting comfortable because she said that it got up on the bed, did its couple circles, jumped off the bed, making a big thud on the ground, and then walked out of the room into the hallway. At this point, that she was still kind of asleep, she was barely awake, but she could definitely still feel her dog laying next to her asleep, even snoring a little bit. She said she was too tired to look over, but was definitely a little freaked out on what could have possibly jumped off of her bed that loud and went into the hallway if her Great Dane was still sleeping next to her. But she was too tired, so she just rolled back over and went back to sleep. All I know is I would have done a real quick like that. Who the heck is laying next to me, okay? If it's my dog, we have a problem because someone's out in the hallway in our house. It's not my dog laying next to me. You're about to get a rock'em sock'em because ain't nobody supposed to be here besides me laying in this bed. She then says that she hears a loud smack on the side of her husband's bed. She said that it sounded like someone's palm of their hand just hitting the wall as hard as they could. Then after that, she heard a loud thud at the foot of her bed with immediately following little footsteps running into the hallway. Hello, FBI, Ghostbusters, and the priest. Hi. Yeah, I'm gonna need all of you at my house pronto and call the paramedics because I'm about to simply pass away. All I know is I'm not getting up out of this bed until someone else is here to help me figure out what's going on in my house. That's when she finds out that her Great Dane is still laying next to her because all of that commotion woke the Great Dane up. She peeked around and then just went back to sleep. Yeah, her dog was like, I don't know what's out there, but don't be looking at me like I'm about to go out there and find out. She said that she was trying to rationalize what could be happening and just maybe thought maybe there ended up not really being much work for her husband to do and that they sent him home early, but she wasn't about to get up out that bed. So she decides that she's just gonna call out his name. She does, and she gets no response. So then she just puts the bed sheet over her head and calls her husband. She calls and asks him if he's at home, but he says that he's still at work. Then he asks her if everything's okay, and she says that the house is creeping her out again. Her husband then makes a very long pause on the phone and just says, yeah, I have to tell you something, but I don't want to freak you out. Sir, what do you mean? Because I'm already freaked out. I'm currently under my bed sheet right now. Okay, I'm beyond freaked out, so go ahead. Tell me what you got to tell me. This man goes to say that when he was getting ready that morning for work, that he was sitting in one of the dining chairs tying his shoes when all of a sudden he heard these footsteps that sounded like it was just running straight towards him, and that it was coming right for his face since he was bent over tying his shoe. He said when the footsteps got super close to him that he felt a breeze go by and that he could see whatever it was moving and that it stepped on that plastic bag that she heard also at the end of the hallway. He says that he even forgot his lunch on the kitchen counter because he literally booked it out of there the second that happened. If I was his wife, he would have also been getting a rock'em sock'em. Because what do you mean you left me in this house with this creepy paranormal stuff happening? All I know is that that is super hateful, and he better sleep with one eye open. And not because of the ghost, because of me. Because the second you go to sleep, sir, rock'em sock'em, you've got to be kidding. I don't think they ever figured out what it was or if they moved or not, but I don't know about y'all, I'm not sleeping in that house no more. Absolutely not. I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corners with Ken. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you guys have any stories that you want me to share on this page, just send it to the email that's in my bio. Y'all make smart choices, and don't you dare leave your significant other in the house with a paranormal activity happening.
Well, you don't know me.
I was sleeping and my bedroom window was level to the ground in our backyard. I woke up to someone whispering, "Close the window." Because we didn't have AC and it was summer, I ignored it and started falling back asleep. Then the voice screamed, "Close the window now," so I immediately closed it. The next morning, there were dirty fingerprints on the window like someone was trying to open it. When I was a child, I had an imaginary friend. Her name was Jane. I don't remember making her up, I just remember her being so vivid. In the 3rd grade, we visited a 19th century farm on a field trip. Jane told me she was related to me, thus my middle name being Jane, and that she used to live on that farm. A few weeks later, I visited my grandmother and told her about the field trip. She got so excited and told me our family lived on that farm and got out a binder she kept our ancestral records in. Sure enough, there were photos of the exact farm I had visited, and standing in them was Jane. I used to live in an apartment when I was a kid. My brother and I shared a room. I was maybe 7 and he was 5. He would wake up in the middle of the night and go play in the closet with his friend. I always thought he just didn't want to go to sleep and was playing by himself, but one night I woke up because I heard people talking. As clear as day, I heard a little girl say, "Hey, your sister's up." I got out of bed and walked over to the closet to see who was in there, and he was completely alone, just playing by himself. When I was about 6, my mom, sister, and I were at Walmart, and I'd been hiding in the clothes rack playing around. I had gotten lost and couldn't find my mom. This random man found me and asked if I needed help finding her, and I said yes. He said, "Let's go look in the parking lot," and as we were walking out the door, my mom saw us and sprinted to grab me, and the man took off. Not me, but my sister. We shared a room when I was little, and my younger sister had the room next to us. One night while we were falling asleep, she saw my little sister in the hall and told her to come lay down next to her. My little sister did it without saying a word, curling up at her feet, but my older sister said it felt strange, so she said, "Abby?" and my little sister responded from her bedroom. When I was at secondary school, the family of a kid in my year bought an abandoned house. They were going to knock it down and rebuild. One day, they asked us if we knew who lived there before, but we didn't. Turns out, as they were clearing out, they found pictures of me and my twin sister as toddlers riding our bikes in the park. No explanation to this day. When I was 6, I was lying in the dark in my room. My mom came in, covered me with a blanket, and gently scolded me for still being awake. She then left the room, but left the door cracked open just a bit so some light could come in. After a while, I looked toward the door and noticed my mom's eye peeking at me from the back of the door, right where the hinges connect to the wall. I asked, "Mom, what are you doing? Why are you staring at me?" I got up, walked over, and looked at her eye through the crack. She just stared back at me. I could see from her forehead down to her chin through that narrow opening just a thin sliver of her face. When I finally walked around the door to ask her directly what she was doing, she wasn't there.
When little kids talk about ghosts, it's always so much scarier than when an adult says something. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth and scare you real quick. Now focus, scary story time. Reading ghost stories, especially those of little kids, always help me decompress and calm down. So I'm going to tell you one, and hopefully it'll help you too. It might make it worse. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird like that. There's this little girl, her mom said that every time that she would get sick, instead of like waking her mom up like the rest of us did, she would just make her own little pallet in the floor. But one morning she found her in bed with like their mastiff dog. Is that what it's called? The big dog. Like, what are you doing in here? And she said, well, I was gonna come to your room, but there was a little boy at the bottom of the stairs that was crouched like Spider-Man, and he wouldn't let me by. God, scary. My newest podcast episode, if you're seeing this on July 31st, it drops today at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. There's like 50 minutes of more stories like that. And then I also talk a little bit about why this happens and why it's so much scarier when a kid says something about a ghost than if just a buddy was like, hey, what's that behind you? Have you ever had a kid tell you something scary? If you have, let me know in the comments. My favorite thing to read. If you want to hear all about it, I'll have it linked in my stories, or you can just go there if you see this on a different day.
The owner of this photo said that they were completely alone on the beach that night and they didn't notice anything weird until they looked at the picture later. If you zoom in on the water to the left, behind her, there's a tall, dark figure that looks like it's standing right in the waves and watching them. My husband's best friend used to live in the house in the video. He always felt like something else was there, and his cameras would often pick up a bunch of orbs. He eventually ended up selling that house. A couple months after the new owners moved in, they reached out to him asking him if he had experienced anything paranormal when he lived there. They then sent him this video that they caught in their living room when nobody else was home. I took this photo in my apartment where I live alone. I was taking pictures around my place to show some friends how I had decorated it, and when I looked back at them later, I noticed this in one of the photos. I don't know if this is relevant, but the picture was taken during Holy Week. My family is from Rome and we're very Catholic, so I've always heard the superstitions about spiritual energy being stronger during that time. I'm not saying that's what this is, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
I took a temporary job cataloging evidence at an abandoned police station, and I wound up quitting on the third shift. This happened about 4 years ago, and I was pretty desperate for a job at the time, so I took one organizing evidence at a police station that was scheduled to be demolished. We had to get everything organized before it was. The station had been closed for a few years prior to me working there, just because they had a new one that was built right across the street. There was only about 3 of us employees, and we always worked at night because the building didn't have any AC, so it was just a lot cooler to do it at night. The job was super easy. We just had to open up the boxes, log all of the evidence and all the things that was in it, and then seal them back up. So my first shift was pretty uneventful. My second shift, around 1 a.m., I started to hear metal filing cabinets opening and closing up in different parts of the building. I chalked it up to it was just an old building and it was settling. And then on my third shift, my boss handed me a box, and it was a box from the 90s, and they said that this box has never been put into the digital system before. Inside of this box was a handwritten interview transcript. There were a couple photographs and a cassette tape, and I found out that this was never like a solved case. So the weird part to me wasn't the evidence, it was what was written on the last page of the file, and it said if this box is ever reopened, go check locker number 14. So I took it and I showed my boss, and he just kind of looked at me and he's like, I don't think we have 14 lockers. I'm pretty sure it only goes 1 to 13. We went back anyways to go and check, and he counted twice. He's like, yeah, there's only 13 lockers here. So I figured maybe they just remodeled the building, and yeah, there wasn't 14 lockers. A little before 2 a.m., I went downstairs to go grab a dolly from the basement, and to my finding, behind like this old shelf that had crap on it, if you looked behind it, there was like a small little hallway. So I went down this little hallway, and there was a locker number 14 sitting at, like, not on the end of it, but like on the side. It looked very out of place because obviously it's not connected to the other lockers upstairs, and it actually was like bolted to the wall. So I went back upstairs, grabbed my boss, brought him back down to show him the locker, and I swear I'm not crazy, but the locker was not there anymore. There was no locker. I don't know if I was imagining it. I certainly was not on any substances. I don't know what happened. After that happened, I finished up my shift. I went home. The next day in the morning, I got a call. So the call was from the company, and they said that we're done with the project. We're not going to continue it. They want the building demolished, like, right now, instantly. After a few months, I would pass this lot every now and then, and it was just an empty lot. I actually went home one day because I did get curious, and I looked up the article about this case that I found the evidence for, just to see if, like, what the information was, why wasn't it solved, those details, whatnot. Towards the bottom of the article, it mentioned a very interesting detail. It said that there was a detective that actually went missing on this case, and he went missing after telling his partner that he was going to go check locker number 14 and get the things out of it. And according to every floor plan of this building that you look up, there is not a locker 14. Meaning the floor plan did show a basement, but where I know I saw locker 14, there was supposedly a concrete wall and there was no hallway that led to it. So I'm not sure what I saw that night.
This is part 13 of Real Ghosts Caught on Camera. I found this post on Reddit from this user. Amazing username. Anyway, they posted these pictures on Reddit 5 years ago, and they were in the middle of house hunting. So their mom was going around the house taking pictures of all the rooms, and everything was fine except for every single picture that was taken in this one specific bedroom. Seriously, look at these. So their first thought was it had to be the camera, but their mom has a nice Nikon camera, and the weird thing is that these shadows are changing shapes and moving around. I just feel like if this were a camera glitch, it would happen to all the pictures and not just pictures from one specific room. And they were originally posting this to Reddit, hopefully thinking that someone who knows a lot about cameras could kind of steer them in the right direction and tell them, no, this is a glitch, Nikons do this, blah, 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 whatever, but they did not get that. And it looks like some people did actually try to interject and give them some reasoning, but 99% of the comments were like me, and they were convinced that this was immediately a terrible sign and that they should not buy this house. I unfortunately don't have the address to this home because I would immediately be Googling and seeing if there were any deaths or murders or tragic past details from this house, but I can't do that. Anyway, would you guys move into this house? I want to say that I wouldn't, but in this economy, if the price was right, I might. If you like this, please hit the follow button, and if you ever caught a ghost on camera, please send it to the email in my bio. I would love to see it. Okay, bye.
My husband downsized our family, and now I'm seriously reconsidering our relationship. 1 child. That was our plan. 1. Because we could juggle 1 ankle biter with our careers, no problem. But at the ultrasound, the technician got all giddy and said, I've got some fantastic news. Fast forward a few months, and our dear friend, Mr. Stork, dropped off Darren, Deborah, and Daniel. That first year, my husband and I probably got about like 20 minutes of shut-eye between the two of us. We just became the Walking Dead, drifting through feedings, naps, and even bath time. It spilled over into our professional lives too. Like, I would wake up in puddles of drool on my keyboard, and my better half would get in trouble for sleepwalking into surgery with baby vomit still on his forehead. Yeah, safe to say, things weren't exactly stellar. However, we thought we saw the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, we're like, surely our offspring must become more manageable after the terrible news. Wrong. If anything, it got worse. Darren never quit kicking Deborah, who never stopped pulling Daniel's hair, who, well, I can't really fault Daniel. He was a good kid. But anyways, maybe you're thinking that I didn't love my children. That's not true. I adored them. They were just hard work, which is why I couldn't believe it when my husband made the suggestion he did. You want to get rid of them? I asked while prying Deborah's fist open from Daniel's hair. He said, no, think of it more like downsizing. We would just find a family for one of them. Then his eyes flicked towards Darren, who kept kicking his sister, and said, maybe 2. That cold, detached nature is what made him such an incredible surgeon. You know, he operated with total ice in his veins, completely focused on his goals. And after arguing back and forth for nearly 20 minutes, he finally snapped and said, well, we have to do something, okay? 3 healthy children is just too much trouble. We need to do something to make the situation more manageable. Now, I hadn't the faintest idea how he intended to do this, but when I next returned home from a week away with work, and there was perfect silence, chills ran down my spine. Hanging from the door was my husband's surgical gown, just caked in dried blood. And huddled together on the sofa were my children, with Daniel closest, sucking on a lollipop. Beside him was Deborah, who sat peacefully for once instead of tugging on her brother's hair. And it took my brain several seconds to process the reason for this, because her arms were gone. Now only 2 stumps poked out of her sleeves, rounded at the end like pencil erasers. But the horror wasn't finished yet. My eyes traveled slowly past her towards Darren, who couldn't kick his sister because under his shorts were thighs that ended in perfectly straight lines. Just then, my husband stepped through the door, grinning, and then explained the ingenious way that he found to make parenthood more manageable.
Here are some paranormal stories that I got in my DMs. Okay, let's go! This first story is from Alina. When I was 15, I felt sick at school and went home before lunch. My parents were out of town and my aunt was at work, so only my older sister, my baby brother, and I were home. My sister put some chicken in the oven and we went to another room to play with our baby brother. A few minutes later, we both heard what sounded like someone running through the house. We were confused because no one else was supposed to be home. We went to check but didn't find anyone. My sister then looked in the oven and found a cloth on fire beside the chicken. We quickly put it out, but if we hadn't heard that noise and gone to check, the fire could have become much worse and possibly spread through the house. To this day, my sister and I still remember hearing those footsteps. Second story is also from Alina. In 2021, I spent 3 months in Ottawa as my father's medical escort. When it was time for me to return home, my mom came to Ottawa to take over. She arrived the day before my flight. The next morning, I went to the airport, but my flight was canceled because of a blizzard. I returned to Larga, where Inuit families stay during medical travel. When I got back, a woman from my community told me that my mom had gone to the hospital at 6 a.m. because my father had stopped breathing and the doctors were performing CPR. My father passed away at 2:17 p.m. Later that evening, after we returned to Larga, friends and family came to comfort us. When I told them the time he had passed, my friend and my father's cousin were shocked. They said that while they were driving past the hospital on their way to the children's hospital, they had seen a very bright light that looked like stairs reaching from the hospital up into the sky, even though the sky was cloudy that day in Ottawa. My friend and cousin didn't know that he had passed at the time when they saw the bright light. I'm so sorry for your loss, but also that sounds really beautiful. This next story is from Zoe. My grandma is a very spiritual woman and very gifted. She had my uncle at an old age, so my uncle was probably 16 to 17, and there was a mimic or ghost boy that looked like him. My uncle would take showers in the middle of the night at like midnight, and one day my grandma woke up and saw a tall figure that looked like my uncle go down the hall into the bathroom. She shouted his name, but there was no response. So she let it go. Not even a minute goes by and my uncle comes down the hall and my grandma says, "Didn't you go into the bathroom?" And he said no. So she knew it wasn't him. This third story is from Skibbity Riz Guy. I have a story. I was at my grandparents' house in the basement because that's where I would usually stay when I would go there. But one thing in particular has always stuck with me. When I would sleep, I would hear things like shuffling on the carpet, like someone was trying to be as quiet as they can, or whispering in my ear. I would also hear the tiles in the private gym room creak like someone was walking around there. But one time, I felt like it showed me its real form. I was packing and cleaning downstairs to get ready to leave, and something stops me from moving, and I just stare in the middle of the room. Then I see this shadow man come out from the ceiling, no legs, and sink into the floor, like it was trying to grab me. But after it fell, my bag looks like it got thrown across the room in front of me. I then grabbed the bag, jumped over the recliners, and ran all the way upstairs and out of the house. Needless to say, I was ready to kick it out of there. As always, I love these stories, and thank you so much to Alina, Zoe, and Skibbity Riz Guy for letting me share your story. Okay, bye!
I have been waking up every night at 3 in the morning, and it's starting to scare me. I wake up and it's 3 in the morning, and then I'm like, ooh, what demon is trying to tell me something right now? What demon is trying to tell me something right now? And it's been happening a lot more recently. When I was a kid, I used to wake up underneath my bed. And that was fun. I would wake up in the morning underneath my bed or on the side of my bed. And it means I don't think I was falling out of bed because I would have felt that and woken up. I think I was getting up and crawling under my bed or just laying down on the floor next to my bed. And so I have a bit of a history with weird sleep, but I don't wake up in the night normally. I don't wake up in the night. Why have I been waking up at 3 in the morning? Can somebody tell me what to do? Okay. I'm starting to get scared.
Do you want to hear an Ouija board story which is very scary? Well, sit down with a cup of coffee and your cup of tea because I'm going to tell you it right now. Okay, a friend told me a story about how her parents bought a house, and when they started to renovate it, strange things would happen, and her little brother would terrifyingly report that ghosts and being watched. The priest exorcised the house, and after he was finished, he asked the little brother if he was still scared. The brother replied no, and pointed at the priest's car and said, "Because they're going home with you. That's why." The friend convinced me to do the Ouija board. It was safe and fun. She grew up with them and that nothing bad would ever happen. Okay, I will not be doing that again. It did start out light and friendly, but it turned dark and unfriendly very quickly. It's not as scary as some Ouija board stories, but it was scary enough for me. There were 4 girls. 2 of us were staying over but didn't want to do the Ouija. They went to bed in the next room with the door open. This is important. The friend who talked me into trying this, we'll call her Rachel, made a board from a piece of cardboard and marker. I don't remember what we used as a thing you put under your fingers. Maybe called a shuttle. Anyways, it started out pretty cool actually. The first spirit told us his name was Jonathan, and he died when he was 18. We asked him another question, but before the answer came through, the room got cold and heavy. The shuttle shot in a circle around the board and aggressively landed on no. So we asked if this was still Jonathan, and the shuttle did the same thing and shot. Hold on, wait a minute. The shuttle did the same thing and shot around the board to no. Us, put Jonathan back. Shuttle, same, shot around the board back to no. I said no. Couldn't shut the board, and that same moment, my friend who was sleeping in the other room made a loud gasp. They went in there and they said they had been having hard times breathing and felt like something was holding her down on her shoulders. Until the time we destroyed the board, it gives me chills to think about. This happened 25 years ago. I threw the cardboard box into an apartment dumpster. That's really all I know. The other reports are really, really scary stuff, but this was actually really scary experience it in real life. There are millions of ways to talk myself out of what happened. Rachel could have moved the shuttle. My friend could have been scared before going to sleep. Little did she know that what we were doing wasn't comfortable with it, causing her an anxiety experience. The room being cold could just have been our heads, but it was real enough for me to not need to do it again. Yeah. So let's just not use Ouija boards, yeah? Let's not use that. Anyways, bye, love yous.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when the traditional healer took my mom and her sisters to get cleansed in a river that people do nothing but perform witchcraft there. And also there was a snake that stayed there that was owned by a man who uses it for money. So one day my mom and sisters decided that they need to go to a traditional healer to check out what's happening in all of their lives and in their like closeness as sisters or whatever. So they decided to go to this particular traditional healer. Little did they know that this person had not initiated not so long ago, and they did not do the things the right way. They went to a person who taught them wrong things, if that makes sense. So this person did not know their job. Fine, they go there, they consult. This man tells them, number 1, listen, y'all need to go get cleansed, but you need to go get cleansed at night. 2, you need to go get cleansed at this specific river. One of my mom's sisters was like, Aibo, how? Because that river is known to like swallow people and all of that. Are you sure? But then she was not really asking like, are you sure? She was more like, are you sure? Because, I've heard stories. And the guy was like, no. You can trust me. My mom's sisters and her were like skeptical, but they still went. And guess who went with them? Moi. As they were leaving at night, I acted like a freaking handbag because my mom was trying to move left. I said, I'm coming with you. I'm not staying here. You are not going nowhere. I'm coming with you. My mom is like, no. I'm like, yes. So when they were starting to leave, I got into the car and I sat in the front seat and I said, I'm not getting out. This is my mom's car. And like my mom tried to pull me out and my grandmother was like, no, just leave her. Just take her. Love her down. So I went with them. When the traditional got there, when the traditional healer got there, they went with 2 cars because my mom's sisters are kind of a handful of people. They went with 2 cars and the traditional healer used his own car. Fine, they get to the waters. They drive, they park here. The water's here. They park somewhere here. So we're not far. I can see what's happening. They asked me if I wanted to go inside the water and I said no. So fine, I'm sitting in the front seat. I'm busy with my mom's phone, looking at her photos, searching her phone, going through her WhatsApp, and then looking outside. As I'm looking outside, they are wearing clothes or whatever because they need to go inside the water and they don't need clothes. They mustn't be dressed, right? They're going inside the water. The water starts like this, going like this. At first, I'm like, is that a tornado? Because, what is that? So it's going like this, and then you can see, man, as it goes, this thing goes like this, and then it goes And that's when I seen, dang, that's a snake. A really big snake. Never seen that before. I was definitely calm because I was in the car. I started locking the doors. Everybody stopped and they started looking around. I'm like, yo! They start throwing 2 rands in. 1 rand, coins, talking. That person is talking, whatever. The water comes down. As the water comes down, they all go in one by one, one by one, one by one. Remember, I told you, I have an aunt who is a spiritual healer. She's a prophet. But at that time, her gift was still very here. Now it's there, but at first it was here. So she gets inside the water and she starts to have a fit. Guys, it seemed like something is fighting her in the water. I'm like, hey! So I'm looking, guys. I knelt on the seat so that I can see properly because I'm like, what the hell is going on? She's fighting inside the water like she almost drowned. At some point, the traditional healer is pulling her by the foot. So I'm like, yo, like, is everybody okay? The traditional healer is pulling her by her foot. This girl's face is submerged in the water. Guys, at some point, this man lost his grip on my aunt's foot and she went inside the water, disappeared, and the water calmed down. So like everybody's now looking at each other. Some of my aunts are screaming and it's like, is it really the time to be screaming? I don't think so. They start screaming, y'all. They're screaming. So my mom starts praying, y'all. It wasn't funny at that time. It's funny now because she opened her eyes and said, Lord, please. And my other aunt is there, like throwing snakes, begging the ancestors. Somebody else there is praying. Like, it was crazy. So I'm starting to cry in the car because I'm like, I shouldn't have been here. That was crazy. I shouldn't have been here. They start praying. Eventually, another aunt of mine gets into a trance, and I don't know what she was saying because I was too far to hear, and I wasn't opening the door. Next thing, that snake comes out of the car, comes from under the car and jumps in. That's what my imagination was telling me. So they start like my aunts get into a trance. She goes inside the water, and then she starts praying inside the water. All of them get inside the water. They start praying. The water starts roughening up again. This traditional healer is standing there, and he doesn't even know what to do. Whole time, he's the one that was supposed to be leading everybody. He's confused as well. So they're standing there, whatever. They start praying, they start doing the things, doing the things. Eventually, the snake comes again, and then it goes, and then my aunt appeared. Boom. I was like, whoa, she appeared, y'all, and she wasn't even wearing the same clothes as she was wearing. After that, she got out and she told, she told all her siblings, right? These are her cousins. My mom's sisters and my mom are her cousins, but whatever. She tells them, let's leave. They start leaving, whatever, because honestly, they could obviously tell that this traditional healer doesn't know anything. If you knew anything, they wouldn't be in that situation. Do you get what I mean? They get inside the car as they're driving. I'm asking questions like, what was going on there? Like, were you okay? My aunt is a sweetheart. The one that's a prophet is such a sweetheart. She was like, you shouldn't have even be there. I'm like, girl, like, I was already there. I didn't know this was going to happen. She's like, and then they start talking about what happened because my mom was about to shout at me and she was going to be like, why were you there? Well, you were not supposed to see there. Just, you know what I mean? I'm sitting there just listening, and my aunt is explaining to them that this person took us to a place where it is a dark place. You know, this is a very, very dark place. We shouldn't have trusted this person. This person doesn't know what they're doing. And had it not been for me going under the sea, she says she had a talk with the snake. I was like, what? She said that she was talking to the snake. She pleaded with the snake to let her go and let you guys go because she says that snake would have killed all of us. We would have been in a car crash. She would have disappeared in the ocean. We would have been in a car crash had it not been her talking to the snake, whatever. And she says the snake was talking to her. I don't know. She says the snake was talking to her. The snake told her that the traditional healer is not right. And the snake told her that you have a gift and this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. And this guy told my aunt, never in a million years, if you bump into a man named so and so, don't talk to that person. Don't give that person your number. Don't even give him the time of day because that person is using that snake. Right, that snake is like a person, a hierarchy, you know, that if you want money, you can use that snake and then it will want things in return. So he was like, that person wants you and you don't know what that person is doing. That person has a snake, okay, and that snake is moi. So if you get married to that person is going to suck your gift and you are going to become nothing. So you better not associate yourself with that man. And my aunt was like, bet, I heard you. And that was it. And then after that, obviously my mom went back to that man and told him, listen, I want my money back. We want our money back because you didn't do anything. And after that, this traditional healer knew that there was a snake there, went to the person that that snake warned my prophet aunt off. The person who's using that snake for money, that traditional healer went to that person and was like, listen, I have people that I know you want, and he tried to kill my mom and her sisters and my prophet of an aunt. That's why that snake was like, stay away from that man, because that man wanted my aunt's gifts.
Let's read a true, scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy, because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. When I was 19, my mom, my sister, and I lived in a run-down 2-story house that was already old when we moved in. The place always felt strange. Not necessarily haunted, just in an old way that made every creak sound deliberate and every shadow seem darker than it should. There were 3 rooms downstairs and 3 upstairs. My sister claimed 2 of the downstairs bedrooms, while my mom took one of the upstairs bedrooms. That left me with the largest room in the house. There was only one problem. Nobody wanted it. Inside the closet was a second door. Not a normal closet door, a full-size door that had been nailed shut. Whoever sealed it hadn't just used one nail. There were several, along with old latch locks that looked like they had been added over time. The door immediately became a mystery. Why would someone hide a room inside a closet? And why go to such lengths to keep it closed? Eventually, my sister and I decided we had to know. One afternoon, armed with a hammer and more curiosity than common sense, we pulled the nails free. The door groaned as we opened it. Behind it was another room. A completely hidden room. There were no windows, no visible light switch, just darkness. The beam from our flashlight barely seemed to penetrate it. The air inside felt stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Neither of us wanted to step inside. Instead, we took several pictures using the flash on our camera. Then we slammed the door shut, nailed it closed again, and ran. Later that day, we looked through the photos. Every single picture was filled with orbs. Not 1 or 2, dozens. Some were small, others were large enough to obscure parts of the room. At the time, we couldn't tell if they were just dust particles reflecting the flash or something else. Still, the number of them was unsettling. For a while, it became one of those stories we told friends. Then life moved on. Eventually, I forgot about it, until the morning the door opened by itself. At the time, I was working overnight shifts. One morning, after a long night at work, I came home exhausted and headed upstairs to bed. The moment I walked into my room, something felt off. I couldn't explain it. The room looked normal, yet every instinct told me something wasn't right. I walked toward my bed, then I glanced towards the closet. The hidden door was standing wide open. I froze. I know for a fact it had been nailed shut. I had helped nail it shut. Yet there it was, open, not cracked, not partially open, wide open. I screamed. Then I ran downstairs. My sister probably thought I was losing my mind as I tried to explain what I'd seen. But when she came upstairs and looked for herself, she agreed to help me nail the door closed again. After that, I refused to sleep in my room. For nearly 2 months, I slept downstairs in my sister's room. Eventually, I started easing my way back. I moved my bed as far from the closet as possible. If I had to sleep in that room, I wasn't going to sleep anywhere near that door. Over time, the fear faded. Then I started dating an old friend, the woman who would eventually become my wife. With her sleeping beside me every night, I felt safe again. The room stopped bothering me. At least that's what I thought. One night, we were both asleep when something happened that I still can't explain. I suddenly felt the back of my hair being grabbed. Not brushed, grabbed. My head was lifted upwards, then slammed sideways into my solid oak nightstand. The impact was so violent that it woke my girlfriend instantly. She sat up and asked what was happening. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. That was the last night I ever slept in that room. Not long afterward, I moved out and got a place with my girlfriend. Years have passed since then. I've lived in other homes. I've experienced plenty of things that can't be explained away with logic. But every now and then, I'll think about that old house. about the hidden room concealed behind a nail-shut door. I'll think about the photographs filled with unexplained orbs, about coming home from work to find that door standing open, and about waking up in the middle of the night with the feeling that something in that room wanted me gone. Maybe there are explanations for all of it. Maybe there are not. All I know is that after all these years, thinking about that room still gives me chills. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
This is San Antonio's insane asylum. Let's talk about it. Many people say that this is the old San Antonio's insane asylum. People also say that this is the old boys juvenile building. Honestly, who knows? But I have been here inside before it was owned by San Antonio, by the sheriff's department. And there's more than just these two buildings. Behind this building is an even bigger building. I came in 2012 with a few friends. We walked along the side that way behind this building here. And when I say that there was a lot of spooky, creepy, scary sounds, I am not lying. So we were walking along this area going to the back building, and you could hear footsteps inside that building. You can hear whistling. We looked, we ran in there just to see if maybe it was like a homeless person. It wasn't a homeless person. There was no one in there. Now, I don't know if this is a juvenile building. I don't know if this is the true old insane asylum. But what I do know is that it's definitely haunted. I also did see old beds chained down to the ground, and I don't know why a juvenile building for boys would have that. So what do you think? Do you think it's the insane asylum? Do you think it's a juvenile building for boys? And if so, why is it owned by the corrections officers right that way? I don't know about you, but I think that's a little suspicious. Let me know what you guys think.
If I'm going to be scared, you are going to be scared with me. It is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories. Add me on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. Same handle. Without further ado. This story was actually sent to me by one of my high school friends named John, and I'll tag him in this video. It's his first time ever sharing the story, and I 100% believe him. John said that a few years ago, he and his wife are in bed. They're asleep. It's the middle of the night. John is suddenly woken up out of a dead sleep because something is in the room with him calling his name. And he said that this voice did not sound human. Now, when he woke up and he heard this, he realized suddenly he can't move. His body is completely paralyzed. He can't wake up his wife. The only thing he can do is lay there and watch and feel as this thing grabs a hold of his feet at the end of the bed and begins to drag him out of the bed. He said he is absolutely hysterically terrified in his mind, but he can't do anything. He says, "I command you to stop in the name of Jesus." And this thing maniacally laughs when he says that and said, "Jesus has nothing to do with this," and continues dragging him out of the bed. He again begins to pray or command it to leave in God's name, and it just, in response, continues laughing this maniacal, evil laugh. The commotion of this eventually wakes John's wife up, and she doesn't even know what's going on. She just turns over and she sees John's legs literally raised in the air by an invisible force that is holding him by the ankles, and she sees his body being dragged to the end of the bed. She doesn't know what else to do, and she starts praying. They both watch. As she begins praying, John's legs drop. They just suddenly go limp. John said he felt this thing let him go, and it leaves the room. 4 months, he did not sleep right. He said he didn't get a full night's sleep because he was too scared this thing would come back. And he's had other creepy experiences, but never anything quite that traumatic. That is terrifying. I cannot imagine. I've had sleep paralysis-esque things happen to me before. I've even had my blankets pulled off of me. I've woken up and something has been on top of my body, holding me down in the bed and things like that, but never anything dragging me by my ankles out of the bed. Oh my God. You guys let me know what you think in the comments and stay tuned for some more creepy stories.
Welcome back to the post-horror analysis, where we're going to be taking a deep dive into the last true horror experience that took place in the Philippines. If you have no idea what I'm talking about and like some context, feel free to check out the previous video. So before we dive into the supernatural element of the viewer's experience, I thought it was important to first things first explore Filipino burial customs and traditions, as I think this will provide some very important context. Within Filipino Catholic tradition, when a descendant passes away, the family often chooses to commemorate their life through these burial rituals, with one step in the process being the lamay, or burol, which is a wake, a vigil that typically lasts between 3 to 7 days, but this time can be extended under certain circumstances, such as like a family member has quite a while to travel to go and visit. The lamay, however, is consistent even throughout the nights within this 3 to 7 day period, and then family and community members will stay awake, never leaving the deceased alone. Visitors will then drop on by, praying the rosary, bringing food, and providing stories, keeping them company. There are many beliefs as to why during the lamay the deceased is to not be left alone, with one of the reasons being that it wards off evil entities, as if the deceased is left alone, it makes them vulnerable to evil entities such as the aswang, or spirits that might want to manipulate or harm the physical body or the transcending soul. Linking this back to the viewer's experience, they do mention that the elders believe in this, and of course with the closing of the coffin and the rosary being dropped to the side of the coffin by seemingly no one while our viewers slept, perhaps they were correct.
Hi everyone, sorry I've been away for a little bit, but I'm back and I'm here with another spooky, scary story time. When my daughter was 2, I found her twirling paper towel tubes tied with twine in the air. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was practicing her nunchucks. I was very confused as she would have no way of knowing what those were. I asked her what she meant, and she said that Adam had told her how to make them and showed her each night how to use them. She went on to say that Adam told her to practice because she may need to know how to defend herself someday. I almost freaked out, but asked her what Adam looked like. She said he was tall, blonde, and had blue eyes. She said, "Mommy, you know what he looks like. You know him. He died of a headache." I had to leave the room. You see, 4 months before she was born, my tall, blonde, blue-eyed martial arts pro friend had died of a brain aneurysm at the age of 27. She has not spoken of him since that day, so I'm not sure if I scared her with my reaction or if she completed her lessons. That was a super short one, so how would you feel? I personally wouldn't be too bothered by it. Seems like it's a friend, like I wouldn't need to move houses or freak out or anything. She might need to know how to defend herself, so if any ghosts want to come and teach some karate, why not? Why not let them? So let me know how you feel about that in the comments, and glad to be back.
There is something so deeply sinister about how this woman died, yet for some reason, no one is talking about it. This is Mitrice Richardson. In 2009, she began acting really strange at an upscale California restaurant, and when she couldn't pay her bill, she was arrested. I mean, her behavior was so odd that multiple people at the restaurant noticed. But when she got to the police station, the officer said that she seemed totally normal. So normal that they released her at 12:30 in the morning, with no phone, no purse, no way of getting home safely. This was 40 miles from her home. This was in a remote, mountainous area that Mitrice was not familiar with. She disappeared after this. Yet 11 months later, her remains were found in an extremely rugged area deep in Malibu Canyon, with no explanation of how she got to this specific spot. Her skull and spinal cord were severed from the rest of her remains, and the area where she was found is adjacent to a 21-acre farm known for producing corn, an area where many residents heard screams coming from right after Mitrice went missing. The craziest part is that police say no foul play is involved, that Mitrice was not a victim of murder, but I don't believe that. This is hands down a case that will make you question everything. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, stick around and let's talk about it. This is Mitrice Richardson. She was only 24 years old when she mysteriously disappeared and died in 2009. Just 4 months before she died, Mitrice graduated from California State University Fullerton with a bachelor's degree in psychology. She was incredibly smart, and some of her main passions were singing and dancing. She was also a beauty pageant contestant, and she was just about to apply to graduate school. Her absolute dream was to become a child psychologist, and she really wanted to work with kids in the foster care system. Everyone Everyone who knew Mitrice described her as a ball of energy, and it didn't matter who you were. She loved you. At the time of her death, Mitrice had been dating her partner, Tessa Moon, for about 2 years, and they were really happy together. On top of this, she was an intern for a forensic psychologist and a part-time dancer at an LGBTQ+ club. For her full-time job, she was a secretary at a freight forwarding company in Santa Fe Springs. So she had her hands full, but she preferred it this way. This brings us to September 16th, 2009, a day that would forever change Mitrice's life. That evening, Mitrice left work early. Her boss said that she seemed normal, but that she was overly happy and seemed excited for something. He described her as floating around the warehouse. Not concerning, but definitely a little bit different than how she normally acted. After she left, she drove her Honda Civic to her aunt's house, but she wasn't home. This is when Mitrice's behavior starts to get more bizarre. She ends up leaving a bunch of her business cards all over her aunt's front porch, even stuffing them into plants. And then she leaves a written note on her uncle's car, and it doesn't really make sense. It said, quote, "Who is queen now, Mississippi?" End quote. After this, Mitrice ends up driving to a restaurant called Joffrey's, which is a really upscale coastal restaurant in Malibu that a lot of celebrities like to go to. But from the moment she pulled into the driveway, her behavior began getting worse. The valet driver at the restaurant said that her car was in complete chaos, and it looked like it was ransacked. But then Mitrice climbed into the valet's car and started looking through his CDs. At this point, she didn't seem well, so he asked if she was okay, in which she replied, quote, "It's subliminal." End quote. She proceeded to talk to him about the language of numbers and asked if he understood what she was saying, but he said no. She then said, quote, "Well, I'm here to avenge Michael Jackson's death." End quote. Once she got into the restaurant, her behavior became even more bizarre. The host sat her at a table alone, in which she ordered a really expensive $65 steak. And then at one point, she got up and actually sat herself at a different table where a large party was already seated. And she tried talking to them, but only in riddles. At least to them, right away it seemed like Mitrice was mentally ill. She kept talking about hearing voices and needing to crack a code. So not only do you have employees of this establishment concerned for her well-being, now you have other guests concerned too. They said it was clear that Mitrice was not drunk. She was definitely suffering some sort of mental health crisis. At one point, Mitrice tried to walk out of the restaurant without paying her $89 bill, and she told the host, quote, "I don't have to worry about my meal because God told me that it would be taken care of," with the language of numbers that makes sense. End quote. Obviously, the manager tried to hold her and tried to find somebody to help pay her bill, but Mitrice's phone was out in her car, and the only number she remembered by heart was her great-grandma Mildred's. Now, Mitrice lived with Mildred at the time she disappeared in South LA, but Mildred was 91 years old, so when the restaurant called her, she said there was no way she could drive down there on her own. As this was all happening, Mitrice was telling the manager that she was from Mars, and that she planned to have sex with him that night. When he showed her the bill, he said that it seemed like her eyes just melted, kind of like she was in a trance or something, and she was fixated on the number 8. So all of the restaurant employees talked to each other and felt like the best thing they could do for Mitrice would be to call the police. They didn't want to get her in trouble, but it seemed clear like mentally something was going on, and she just needed help. They thought if they called the police, they would help and take care of her. Sadly, they were very wrong. So once police arrived, they issued a field sobriety test to see if she was intoxicated, which she was not. In fact, she had no drugs or alcohol in her system at all. Authorities decided to search her car, and there they found less than an ounce of marijuana. But in the trunk, they found other things as well. And this was all witnessed by staff at the restaurant. In the trunk were empty pill bottles, 2 full gallons of Smirnoff vodka, and a case of beer and tequila. As this was all unfolding, the valet asked the police what was wrong with Mitrice, in which the officer replied, quote, "She's a ding." End quote. And this is a really important detail because I guess this is a pretty common saying within law enforcement, and it's used to describe people struggling with their mental health. So with that being said, it must have seemed clear to even the responding officers that Mitrice was struggling mentally. They said the only way they could help her was to arrest her. So they did. They handcuffed her, put her in the back of the squad car, and booked her at the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Station. They left behind all of Mitrice's personal belongings in her car, so her phone, purse, and money, and then her car was towed away to a tow yard. On the way to the police station, which was about 20 miles from the restaurant down dark, windy, mountainous roads, her mom called the police. She had been notified by Mildred that Mitrice was acting strange, and she was looking for some sort of update. Her mom was super concerned because this behavior did not sound like Mitrice. And she even made a joke to the officer that said, quote, "She's not from that area. I'd hate to wake up to a morning report about a girl lost somewhere with her head chopped off." End quote. She just kept asking them if Mitrice was going to be held overnight or not, because if she wasn't, she needed to come get her. But the officers at the station reassured her that they were going to be holding Mitrice all night and promised her that she would be safe, that they wouldn't release her until the next morning when it was light outside. But sadly, this was not the case. In fact, nothing about what happened next makes any sense. So according to the officers on duty, when Mitrice arrived to the station around 10 p.m., she seemed totally normal. They said nothing about her behavior was unusual and that she was coherent and polite. They also said that no one had informed them that she'd been acting bizarre at the restaurant. The biggest question I have is, what changed? In a short period of time, she goes from acting really erratic to now normal. They ran her information and found that she had no criminal history. And feeling like they couldn't enforce a 5150 hold, they let Mitrice go. They released her into the dark at 12:30 in the morning, knowing that she didn't know the area and that she had no phone to call for help or to get a ride home. What's strange is that the arresting officer said that no one at the restaurant told him that Mitrice was acting strange, which was a lie. And on top of this, he didn't even include any of what happened at the restaurant in his incident report. So now it's 12:28 a.m. on September 17th, 2009. Mitrice is released from the police station because they said she seemed just fine, but they never even performed a mental health evaluation. According to them, they offered for her to stay in the lobby, but she declined. A few hours later, now 5:30 in the morning, Mitrice's mom calls the police station to see when she can come and pick up her daughter. And it's only then that she finds out that they let Mitrice go hours earlier without notifying her like they promised. Now, so much time has passed and no one knew where Mitrice went after leaving the station. But about an hour later, they get their first clue. This is when Mitrice was seen in the backyard of a former KTLA news anchor, Bill Smith. Bill lived in Montanito, so this was about 6 miles from the police station where she was released. This likely would have taken Mitrice about 2 hours to walk. And keep in mind, it's pitch black out because it's the middle of the night and she doesn't even know this location. He tried asking her if she was okay, and all she said was, quote, "I'm resting." End quote. Bill called this into the police not knowing who Mitrice was at this point. But again, it seems like the police didn't really care. They showed no signs of urgency coming out to check if this was Mitrice or not, which her family says is unacceptable. Later on, it was confirmed that this was Mitrice. But at this point, it was too late. Where exactly she went after this or what happened to her has never been explained. Mitrice officially became a missing person after this, and it wasn't until months later that full-scale searches were conducted. Eventually, though, in January of 2010, the LA County Sheriff's Department conducted a thorough search, which was actually the largest in its history. Over 300 volunteers trained in search and rescue operations were brought in, as well as tracking dogs. They searched by land and air and scoured Malibu Canyon, all 18 square miles of it, which included every creek, trail, and ridge. Investigators found footprints that belonged to Mitrice in the mud, and it was really strange because they indicated that she went from walking to running. So it seems like she was very scared of something or someone. But other than this, no trace of Mitrice was found. In the summer of 2010, her family came out and conducted another massive search over 2 days. This concluded an additional 100 volunteers. Again, they found no trace of Mitrice, but they did find something really disturbing. Inside of a culvert was freshly graffitied racially and sexually offensive remarks. It's never been proven that this was connected to Mitrice, but it was incredibly fresh and in the areas they were looking for her, so it could be. It would take 11 months of Mitrice being missing before any other discoveries would be made, and this time it was even more horrific. On August 9th, 2010, her naked, mummified remains were found in a creek bed, deep in an area known as Dark Canyon. Her body was found by park rangers who were searching for an illegal marijuana farm in an unrelated case. This was a really remote and rugged area, but it was only 6.5 miles from the police station where she was released from the night she went missing. Her belt, bra, and jeans were scattered hundreds of feet down the ravine. And most disturbing of all was that her skull and spinal cord had been detached from the rest of her remains. Her socks, shoes, and underwear have never been found. Neither together have some of her bones. Oddly enough, one of her bones that has never been found is her hyoid bone. This bone can indicate whether or not someone has been strangled, but the location of where she was found is what makes this case so strange. First off, it is really hard to get to, so it seems nearly impossible that she would have been able to get there on her own in the middle of the night. But where she was found was actually adjacent to a 21-acre ranch that is known for producing corn. It's super secluded, but it has direct access to the creek bed where Mitrice was found. And even stranger, several residents in the area heard screaming coming from this property in the days after Mitrice vanished. So all of this together seems like something really sinister happened to her. But get this, the coroner specifically ordered the LA County Sheriff's Department to leave Mitrice's remains right where they are until they get there so they can properly examine her body and the scene. That's protocol, because you have to assume foul play is involved before ruling it out. But what do the police do? The same ones who released Mitrice, even though she was clearly having a mental health episode, removed her body from the scene without waiting for the coroner, completely going against their orders. Ultimately, and with reasons I just do not understand, the LA County coroner ruled Mitrice's cause of death as undetermined. They don't know how she died, but authorities have ruled out foul play. They say Mitrice is not a victim of homicide, but her family and so many others do not believe this ruling. Everything from the very beginning screams either botched or cover up. And what's crazy is that for the longest time, police said they had no video of Mitrice in custody the night she disappeared. But months later, they admitted that they did. But they were sure that it showed nothing strange, which, again, is not true. When her family finally got to review the footage, it very clearly showed Mitrice acting strange while in police custody, completely going against everything they said. They said they released her in the middle of the night because she seemed fine. That was a lie. And so many people backed that up. But what's really concerning is about 2 minutes into the video after Mitrice is seen leaving the station, another person is seen leaving, almost like they walked out after her. It took 12 years and for a news station to track this person down, and he ended up being a deputy at the station. He said he had never been questioned about Mitrice at all in that 12 years, and he was adamant that he never saw her that night. I don't know if I believe him given the track record of this police station. But what's really sad is that on top of this, authorities ended up leaving some of Mitrice's bones out in the wilderness. I don't know if they didn't see them or just forgot or what, but at one point, Mitrice's mom went out there with a private investigator, and she ended up finding one of her daughter's finger bones under a rock. I truly do not get how that happens, but that's not all. Even more happened that has left me speechless. So on the day that Mitrice was set to be buried, the private investigator found a bag of Mitrice's clothing, the one she was wearing when she disappeared, inside her body bag. And get this, these clothes were never sent off to a crime lab to be tested. So at this point, so much evidence was either lost, never tested, or destroyed. Some think Mitrice was a victim of foul play just based on how her body was discovered. It seems like someone had to have put her there. And I guess when she was found, one of her arms was tightly flexed against her chest, almost as if she had been restrained for a period of time. Years later, her family even exhumed her body, yet no answers were ever found. To this day, her cause of death remains undetermined, and there's been no justice. Mitrice was failed so many times by the people who were supposed to protect her. Her parents filed a civil lawsuit against the county, and they ended up receiving $900,000, but that doesn't bring Mitrice back. They pushed for the case to be reviewed by the California Attorney General's office, but in 2017, they concluded their investigation. They said that no one, not even the police station that released Mitrice, was legally responsible for her death. Her family believes that Mitrice suffered from some sort of undiagnosed mental disorder, likely bipolar, and a psychologist working on the case said that it seems like Mitrice was having a manic episode the night she disappeared. After reviewing her social media and phone records, they think it's even possible that Mitrice went 5 days without sleeping before she disappeared. According to her family and girlfriend, Mitrice never showed any signs of mental illness growing up. It wasn't until right before her death that she started doing little things that, in hindsight, could have been mental health related. She would sometimes text her mom bizarre texts that just didn't make sense, but then she would always have some sort of answer that would kind of explain it away. The psychologist that she was interning with said that sometimes Mitrice's behavior was a little bit concerning, but it was always very subtle. Absolutely no one knew that it was going to escalate like this. While all of that may be true, one thing is for sure. Mitrice was failed by the people meant to protect us. For reasons unknown, they didn't want to hold her that night, even though it was very clear that she needed help. And now she's not here when she should be. I don't know what happened to her after she left the police station that night, but it's clear that whatever it was very sinister. Her mom fought for a very long time trying to figure out what happened to her daughter. But sadly, she passed away last year, never knowing. It's now been 17 years, and whatever really happened to Mitrice that night in the woods remains a mystery.
Bro, what's going on around